We're going to keep it nice and simple for this one. 3 brushes will do the job, a fairly big brush. This one's a 20, but it could be a 14 or a 16, a round brush putting a big wash on. We've got a size 10 or a 12 brush, again, round brushes. And we've also got a size 6 brush as well, so we've got 3 brushes, and that'll pretty much do the entire thing for us. I've got water here, got some kitchen paper as well. I've actually got a kitchen roll, yes, for a change. And we also have a little scrap piece of paper, which is always good for trying out little bits. And as far as colours are concerned, I'll just quickly mention the palette here. I mean, this is my own palette, and lots of you have these, but we don't need that. I'm sticking to 3 colours, and I'm using primary colours here, folks. So I'm using some kind of a bright blue. This one is natural blue. You could use cobalt or ultramarine, or even cerulean blue would be fine. Some kind of bright yellow. This one is natural yellow light. You could use cad yellow, or cadmium yellow, or you could use aureolin. We've also got a red. This one is natural red. You could use crimson, alizarin crimson, or rose madder, those 3 colours. And basically I'm going to squirt a big generous blob of these into the palette, alright? So it's all about getting the first background down. Now, if you've got a hairdryer handy, it's not a bad idea for this one. We shall have a bit of a break in the middle as well, because I'm sure that some of you, after you've been sat waiting for me since 10 o'clock, will need to get some coffee on the job. I'm sure, won't you? So I've put a big squirt in, so 1, 2, 3 colours. I'll keep showing you the palette. I'm going to zoom in close to the paper now, because you don't want to see me, you want to see the page, don't you? So, and I'll keep an eye on those comments. You can also email me questions as well if you want to, folks, so don't worry too much. How's that? Can we see everything? Are we nice and close in? You can't go wrong with this. And do let me know if this is something that you want to keep seeing on a regular basis, because I will keep doing them with you, alright? We're looking as though everyone's ready for action. You can smell the fear, can't you? Now I do want to put a sun on this one, and I did mention in the email that we sent out, if you've got some kind of a round coin or something, that's good for putting the sun on. I know that some of you have done this before, but if I get a round coin, this is just an English penny, and I'm going to use a piece of kitchen paper. I'm going to fold this thing in half and pop the coin. So I basically folded the tissue in half, and I'm going to pop the coin inside there and gather it, okay? So it's a nice kind of twisted piece of tissue paper there. And that is like having a sun, basically. So that gives the sun, alright? So if you get that and pop that to one side. Now as far as the sky's concerned, no sketching. We mentioned that one. So we don't have to worry about sketching, okay? So it's... just got an interesting question from Andrew, you can see in the comments. Can't get my lid off my paints. That's excitement, that's what that is, right there. That's because you're excited. What you need to do is you need to actually, if you get hot water, I know it's probably a bit late now, but if you get hot water, you can sort of, you know, sort of yank it off, like, if that works. If that doesn't work, use your teeth, or not. Pliers works, or a pair of snippers. Chop the bottom off if it comes to that stage, yeah? So as far as the sky is concerned, folks, I'm going to paint the sky first here. I would suggest, because I want to do this like a proper workshop, I want people to enjoy this. It doesn't matter if we go on a little bit longer than what we said. It doesn't matter at all. But what I do want to do is I want to make sure that you can enjoy this and you can paint along with me. So my first thing to do is I'm going to put in the sky and let it dry, okay? That's my first job, okay? I'd suggest just watching. Are we ready for this? This is the future of watercolour painting. So I've got my big brush. I want to wet the entire sheet of paper. Now my recommendation, like I say, for this first bit, I'd just watch this, okay? I want to wet the entire sheet. Now, if you're using my paper, and I know a lot of you will be using my paper, you'll be working on a cotton surface paper. Now a cotton paper, what tends to happen with cotton is it goes on and it absorbs pretty much straight away. So the first bit that you put on pretty much just goes in. So if you give it a second coat, if you're using papers like Bockingford or anything like that, wood-based papers, then it will probably be wet enough straight away. But I mean, that is fine there. That's had a couple of coats of water and you can see it's nice and wet, can't you? Yeah, there you go. We've got these big spotlights shining down in the studio today. It's quite warm. I can feel the heat here, so it's going to kick off. Now, I just watched this first piece. Once you've wet it, I'd suggest that you stick the brush in the water, wipe off the excess on the side, and yes, you know what's coming. Shake off the drips like the fellas do. And then what we're going to do is just remember that you can pause this video and you can go back on it. You can sort of rewind with the slider. So if anyone's got the buffering issues, just bear that in mind. Lower the quality. Remember, you can watch this back at any time as well. But it really depends on how good your internet connection is, to be fair. Now, lift the yellow, stick it in the middle. This stuff here, this brown goo, this is gum arabic. It's gum arabic, that. So a nice vivid yellow, and I'm going to pop it straight on. Looks more green on the screen. But that yellow, seriously, is quite thick, and don't be afraid to put it on thick as well. So a nice rich yellow. Can you see how strong that colour is? It's basically halfway, and I'm taking it all the way down to the bottom as well. So straight down. So all the way down to the bottom. It's pretty much halfway and then straight down. But honestly, just don't be afraid to use the paint thick. It looks quite green on the screen, but you know, when it dries, it'll be more yellow. It's because the light's reflecting against it. So don't worry about that. It is definitely yellow. It's to do with the way the camera translates it, because I'm not really that colour in real life. I'm kind of red on there. So that's a nice rich yellow, yeah? Are you with me on this? Straight from the blob, straight on the paper, don't be afraid. All the way down to the bottom. Clean your brush, wipe off the excess on the side. Now remember, if you don't get this first time, you can watch it back at any time. That's the great thing about this, actually, because it's kind of recording it for you guys that are watching. Then we're going to go for more of an orange. So I want to take some of the red. Now that's a rich colour, so if you mix the red and the yellow together, not too much red though. That goes almost to the top, yeah? And then cross your brush and bring it down so it mixes, and take it down into the yellow. Keep it going until it kind of disappears into the bottom. I want to take a bit more of that colour and pop it across the base as well. So there's a bit of the red at the bottom. If I do it nice and steady for you, you can see that kind of transition. See the hard line? That's telling me that this is almost dry, but it's not an issue because it's a good quality paper, and you'll see where we're going with this. Clean your brush after doing the reddy orange. Wipe off the excess. Again, always give it that bit of a sort of shake on the side there. And then we're going to pop some blue, some natural blue or whatever blue you're using. Doesn't matter what blue you're using. Stick it over the top of the red. You could always put a bit more red in if you want to go more purple. But you get that kind of purpley tinge coming through there. I always do that, by the way. I think that's a bit of a habit that I get into. Wiping off the excess on the side is quite a nice way of doing it. This goes across the top. And then you bring it down. So you cross your brush. See the cross? Keep it going. Move back up again. Nice and steady. Until all your colours kind of get that nice transition. Now at the bottom of the picture here, let's just come back a touch for you. I'm just going to pop in a couple of little bits down here as well, but not much. So whatever's left on that brush, you can put some horizontal lines across basically, and it allows it just to give a little bit of a ripple. All right, that makes sense. Then if the paper lets me, and don't worry if it doesn't, but if the paper lets me, I'm going to take that coin and decide where I want to put the sun. So I think just off centre, you know. Press it firm only once and let go, and it should do that. Now if it doesn't, it's because it's too dry. Don't worry, because you can say to yourself that the sun's gone down, basically. See, it's more yellow now, it's had a bit of time to dry. So a good firm press. In fact, if you look close, you see the Queen's head on there. So, that's the coin in the tissue. Now, I'm literally going to let you do that now. I'm stopping, I'm letting you doing it. I'll talk you through it again. It's your time to shine. Loosen the wrist, because I bet you've not painted for a while. I'll have an M&M. Other chocolatey peanut sweets are available, of course. And we shall go through it. And make sure you don't put your brush in the tea, because I know we're excited today. It's nice to get back teaching again, obviously, because of all this stuff that's going off, you know, in the world. It's nice to get people and nice to get some interaction. I'll mention this because this is a good thing to talk about. You can probably see, if I get this close, it's starting to run a little bit here. Can you see that little bit of a run? Well, that's basically where it's a bit wet coming to dry. Now, if you take the brush and you squeeze the life out of it so it goes flat, there's no harm in lightly feathering these colours in to prevent them from cauliflowering, but it really doesn't matter if it did cauliflower, okay? Good luck with that, you can't go wrong. I'll talk you through the process again, folks, alright? So, first thing to do is basically get a slate. If you're working on a table or your knee, just get a very slight tilt on the board. It doesn't want too much of a tilt, but a little bit of a tilt on the board is all we need. Just a very gentle sort of tilt back, and then wet it all. If you're using my paper, folks, the cotton, the Matthew Palmer paper, you can wet it twice, okay? But don't saturate it, so just kind of watch out for where it gathers around the bottom, yeah? You know what I mean? We don't want moist bottoms, do we? Maybe this workshop should be censored, eh? And then, once it's shiny, your paper's going to do a bit of this. It's going to go a bit wavy. That is just what happens with this, so don't worry about that. That is absolutely normal for that to do that. Yellow from about halfway, from about here, straight down, and don't be afraid to use that paint thick. Yeah? Use it strong. Now I've got a tip for stray hairs on the painting. I apologise for saying pubic on a live stream. We don't need to worry about them. If you try and pick them off with a fingernail, you'll just leave a scratch on your sky. Forget those, okay? What I'm going to say to you is just leave them and it'll just disappear, because after this is dry, completely dry, we are going to put some clouds in this sky, but after it's dry, okay? It's a bit easier that way. Okay, so it's the yellow first, about halfway, straight down, nice and strong with the yellow, and don't be afraid. Working pretty quickly because you're working against the paper drying. Only at this stage are we concerned about drying time, alright? So don't worry too much. Then what you do is you mix a bit of red and the yellow, so you get like a sort of orangey colour, maybe more towards the red, but don't worry too much about that. If it is more towards red, it's not a major issue. And then what you do, folks, is you don't go all the way to the top. You kind of start almost at the top, leaving a couple of inches, and then work down. Do a little bit from the bottom, but don't lose all the yellow. Just horizontal brush strokes is the key. If you have gone all the way to the top, don't worry, it still works, it's fine. But always get into the habit when you do your skies of cleaning and wiping off that excess and shaking the drips off. I mean, water is the biggest problem in watercolours, and I think that the people that do this regularly kind of know what we're talking about, yeah? So there's 120 people watching us paint this, folks, which is great. I was really blown away by the amount of people that signed up to this thing, folks. So thanks for sticking with us through this crisis. And thanks for sticking through us this morning as well. This is the hairdryer, by the way. Because it was a bit of a nightmare this morning getting everything working. After spending a week of testing. About a week and a half of solid testing. And then you get to the day and bang. But Twitch has come to the rescue, so if you keep onto your Twitch account, folks, because if you're doing the Bluebell Wood with me next Sunday, the 5th, once you've signed up, you can access this. Remember, it's only available for people that are signed up, and we will send you a link. You will get a link emailed to you at the end of this week and access these videos at a later stage. So you can watch this again and again. You can keep looking at this as much as you like. It's your video to enjoy. How are we doing? Right at the top, it's the blue with a bit of red. If you put too much red in, just put some more blue back in. But don't worry if it's more red up there, because it still works. There's a sky, it still pretty much works, all right? We're not concerned about that. Now, as far as the sun's concerned, that comes right at the end. So a quick recap. Yellow from halfway straight down. Clean the brush, wipe off the excess. Put a bit of red with the yellow from about here straight down. A little bit at the bottom, not too much. Then you mix the blue with the red. And you bring that down from the top. Bring it down from the top, okay? And these kind of ripples that are painted across the bottom there, the way I did them, I'll just mention, this is the last thing we're going to do. This is the colour, the blue and the red kind of purple. What you do is you kind of wipe off the excess on the side like this. So it's kind of dry. And you just put a few horizontal lines. Hopefully your paper's still damp. If anyone's getting hard lines here, like worms or snakes, let me know in the chat and I will address that situation, okay? Just taking a quick photo from So Karen's got worms, right? Well, the NHS are a little bit inundated at the minute, but I will show you how to address painting worms at least, okay? So if you've got worms here, don't worry. Clean the brush. You can all do a bit of this after you've put your sun in. Get your sun in before we address the worms. If the sun doesn't come, we can do something later to wash it out. So don't worry if you don't get the sun. Not a problem. But what we'll do is we'll clean the brush for the worms. We'll squeeze it through his fingers, okay? So basically you're squeezing out all the excess water so it's flat, but it's damp. And you can use this and you can go horizontally across your paper like this. And that'll address the worms. So for example, if I paint some worms on this piece of paper here, this scrap paper here, yeah? That's maybe what you've got, some of you. What we'll do is we'll, like I say, clean the brush, give it a good old squeeze out. And you can go horizontally across. And can you see it kind of diffuses it? But notice the speed of the brush stroke I'm doing here. Alright, so it's a speedy situation. You see, because watercolour never really 100% sort of dries permanently, most colours, not all colours, but most colours, you can reactivate at any time. Alright, how are we doing, folks? Do I need a doctor? Maybe. And JS51. I'm hard of hearing. Well, you know, this is something I'm planning on doing all the time. What's happened recently is I've spent the past 2 weeks cancelling workshops because of obviously the world events. And today I should have been doing a painting workshop in Southam in Warwickshire in the UK, and the painting we was doing was actually this, if I can sort of get the camera to come across, it was this lighthouse picture here. So I'm really pleased that lots of the people that were coming to Southam have signed up for the workshop today, so that's cool. And like I say, next weekend I should have been teaching a workshop in Guildford near London in Surrey. Obviously we're not going there, so we'll be doing another one of these. And if you guys want them, I'll keep doing these all the time for you. Preventing the boredom. I know, so I've got my own kitchen roll. You know something? It's a pretty impressive roll, a kitchen roll. I've had it for about 4 years, this one. Good stuff. Might have to use it for toilet roll if the shortages continue, eh? How are we doing with these background folks? Just to mention, by the way, we are in depression mode here. The first hour is the stressful bit, yeah? That's what we call depression stage, and things that go through people's minds at this early stage in a picture is, you know, I'll not be framing this one, I'll do it again another time, I'll do it on the back, but at least it's a day out. But it's not a day out, is it? At least it's a day in, but out. You know what I mean, don't you? Painting is a good way of de-stressing. Now what I want to do, folks, is I'm going to take this off the board and give this a bit of a dry. Now you don't have to worry too much if you've not got a hair dry, because it will dry naturally. And while that's drying off, you can have a little look at a tit on a tap, which you can just kind of see at the back of the easel there. Does anyone recognise the tit? This is like watching paint dry, isn't it, this? At the same time as drying these pictures off, folks, once you think it is dry, and for those that are using hair dryers, if you flatten it with your hand at the same time, it will go nice and smooth for you, okay? Yeah, the steam train, that's the Flying Scotsman, that. Somebody recognised that from the painting workshops that we've been doing recently. Right, so that's nice and dry, okay? How are we doing, folks? Is yours dry? Have we got a dry sheet of paper? Because the next thing is to put some clouds in the sky, alright? And for this I'm going to be using a size 10 brush, okay? So I'm going to work down the brushes. We're going from the 20 to the 10. And we're going to use this, I'm going to put the clouds in, then we're going to soften them in. Now, quite a lot of you have got hold of the blending blades. We don't need them for this picture, so it doesn't matter. But I'll mention them if you've got them. It might be a good time to think about using them. These are my brushes, blending blades, and this is the larger one. It allows you to do clouds a little bit easier, but I'm not going to use those. I'm going to use a size 10 brush, okay? So you can sort of do this at your own leisure. And just make sure things are nice and dry at this point, okay? Yeah, I've been told off for saying the word tit. Well, you know, I've actually said the word tit on live TV before, and I got away with it. But in context of a bird, sorry, a feathered bird, I'll stop. But you know what I mean. It's fine. Clouds. I'm working from about the halfway point now, folks. Okay, and once I'm dry on here, which I am, I'm going to be working from in the top kind of section around the sun. If you didn't get the sun, so if you didn't get the sun, this is what you do. Okay. Let me know in the comments, did anybody not get the sun in the chat? No? Okay. Well, if you didn't, size 6 brush, the smaller one, clean it, tap it on the tissue a few times, and you can actually use it and you can swirl around in a circle and you can dab with tissue. Now I'm not going to do that obviously because I don't need to because I've got the sun, but you can wash the yellow off. Make sure it's over the yellow, okay, because that's the piece that will get out if you want to get it off, okay. If you're trying to wash off any others, then you'll struggle, okay. Right, so I'm going to work around here and put some clouds in, coming in from the sides basically. Size 10 brush. We're going to mix a couple of colours here, folks. I'm going to show you how to make some interesting cloud effects for this sunset sky. Something a bit different that you might not have done before as well. My water's gone green, but that's still okay to use. Just don't drink it, will you? Alright. So, similar situation. Clean the brush, wipe off the excess, give it a shake. Alright. We don't want too much water, but remember this is the 10 or the 12 size I'm using here. Are you with me? If your sun's not as clear as mine, Celia, is it Celia I'm saying there? You can use a damp brush and you can just give it an extra wash and keep washing, keep washing, keep washing. If anybody's got one of my lift out brushes, the square brushes, bit of water, that'll get you the sun even more. If you really still want to continue and get the sun, you can always go back at the end and put some white paint on. If you've got some white watercolour, you could do that. Okay, so wipe off the excess water. Let's mix up a fairly strong colour. So now you could use, a bit later, you could start to bring in natural grey. Now I know someone mentioned in the comments about natural grey. It's a colour what I've had for a while, but there's lots of people here that won't have natural grey. We're just going to stick 3 colours throughout this picture, and the same for the one next week as well. So I'll put the blue in first. A little bit of water. Can you see the movement in that? Tiny bit of red, so you get a slight purple. Can you see the slight purple coming through? Brilliant. And then here, in a second mixing area, we're going to mix up a bit of an orange. So we'll get the yellow. I'll do it there because we've got some yellow. Fairly strong, tiny bit of red. So we've got an orange and we've got a purple. Now if you was to put those 2 colours together, you would get grey. Orange and purple make grey. But we're going to kind of mix these together. And let me show you the clouds. Now I'm going to zoom in a bit closer for this because I mean obviously that's the point of doing this. So you can see the detail. And I'll work in from this left side of the picture first of all. So I'm going to pick up the blue first, wipe off the excess on the side. This is the blue with a bit of red. There we go, blue and red, making sure I've got plenty of colour. And then I'm literally going to take that brush flat, I'm going to pop it almost parallel to roughly where the sun was. If you've not got the sun, don't worry, doesn't matter. And what I can do is I can basically lay it flat and twist. Sort of wiggle across. Now this is against the dry paper, we'll get to that. I want to move across towards the sun. As I do so, I'm going to lift off the brush so it goes more pointy. Does that make sense? So I'm basically going from that to that as I twist. Have a practice. I normally say on your neighbour's picture, but you've probably not got a neighbour to practice on today. That sounds wrong, don't it? Let's come back a little bit and let's come over this side and let's do another one over here, okay? So basically I want to work in here, flat to the paper, twist, and I'm going to move across, gradually lifting off the paper with the brush as I move in. And I'm going to do a smaller one here as well. So I'm not putting as much pressure on the brush when I do the smaller ones. Now I want to soften these in and make them look more cloudy. Cloudy, that's a good word, cloudy. I'm going to work it across and we're going to gradually work towards the sun. Now if you want to go over the sun, live life dangerously, sod it, bugger the expense, you can do it, come on. And a tiny one here as well. Now that's just using the one colour for the minute. We're kind of getting a bit of a sky, but it needs to be improved, and it will be, because this is watercolour and it lets us work like this. Now I'm going to clean the brush, I'm going to wipe off the excess. I'll give you time to do this once I've done it on my picture, don't worry about it. And then we're going to pick up the orangey colour, which is the red and the yellow. There it is. Again, wipe off the excess. I'm going to give this a bit of a tap on the tissue as well, because I don't want as much as this as the grey, because if you get sunsets you often get these clouds kind of silhouetting. And I'm going to put the brush over the top and I'm going to twist in, but a bit looser, some of the second colour. There you go. And then we'll do the same over here as well, so we'll give it a twist. So it's reactivating the colour as well. So I'm wiggling around the clouds basically, and all this will get softened in shortly over here as well. So we're going to give it a bit of a twist. So it's encouraging the background colour to mix in. Now I'll be honest with you, mine it's bone dry, but we've got a couple of colours. Then what we do is we clean the brush really well. Now this is where it gets more interesting, folks. We'll clean the brush well. We'll get close into that first cloud. We'll clean the brush really well, wipe off the excess on the tissue, and my first thing is to do some horizontal brush strokes. So it's a good 4 or 5 wipes on the tissue here. So you're kind of softening the bottom of these clouds. Does that make sense? You can do sort of forward and back strokes horizontally. The background is dry, so it's not going to cauliflower. I know some people have a fear about cauliflower, but the secret here is to keep cleaning the brush in the water and do horizontal strokes to the bottom of the clouds. And you can drag these away at the end, you see. Does that make sense? Now if you're lucky, it'll lift a bit of colour off. Can you see that bit of a highlight, like the sun's catching it? Let me come back a touch for you, so you can see the whole thing. So again, I'll keep cleaning the brush, that's really important. Wipe it off on the tissue here. Do horizontal brush strokes. Sweeping across. Then I can use the tip of the brush to soften the top edge. Now this is where those blending blades would come in handy. So basically, I keep saying to you, keep cleaning that brush, keep softening them out. Let's get close into this. Keep cleaning the brush, keep wiping it on the tissue so it's almost dry. And literally use the tip of that brush and get right close in and wiggle and twist and soften the clouds in. So if you compare what I've just done here, that section to that section, you can see an obvious difference, but keep going in the water, do the tissue, and just soften away on the top edge, like so. And you can manipulate them, basically. You could even squeeze the brush through your fingers and do some of this. Can you see that wipe? Like that. With the side of your brush, it puts highlights underneath your clouds. The big focus of this, of course, is going to be the sky. Now at the end here where it finishes, I want to sort of wash that away. It's the 3-finger twist. So basically it's like that. So before your next workshop, practice that. You can't go wrong. Soften it away. Soften the edge. And again, wipe away the bottoms. Look back. So if you look at that cloud, if I zoom back, compare that cloud to these ones. I've not worked on those yet, but look how soft it looks. This is all done after, so it's taking the stress away from the painting, and this is what it's all about. How are we getting on with these clouds, folks? You could come back to this picture in a week and you could do the same. You could keep going. Let me show you on this cloud here as well. So you can clean it, wipe it on the side as much as you want to, and you soften the bottoms away, horizontal, and then you do the twist. You do the little twisty bit like so. Now all this is done on the background because while it's dry. So basically watercolour paint, especially watercolour paint that's over the top of another colour, allows me to go in and do this at a late stage. And it's actually, I think this is quite enjoyable. It's an enjoyable thing to do. Hopefully you agree. So keep recharging that brush, keep softening the clouds in, and do little horizontal streaks at the bottom. It's basically, it's reactivating the colour. Now, the more accomplished artists that are watching this workshop would potentially want to do the clouds all while the background was wet, but there's 120 people watching this video, this workshop, and it's quite challenging to try and do it all in one go, and I don't think it's as enjoyable. I think it's more stressful. I've spent my life teaching the technique, and this just takes some of the fear out of it, but I need to put this point down. It's all about cleaning the brush, giving it a good old wipe on the tissue, and then softening the edge, wiping the bottoms horizontally, getting that gorgeous light. It lifts little bits of colour out like here, and that's lovely to see that, because it really puts a little bit of light in. I mean, if you're going to be more creative with your clouds, you could use that damp brush and you could put some light coming down here, and you can create little bits of highlights and various things like that. Alright, again, clean the brush on the tissue. That is so important to keep doing that, because when that brush dries, it's not going to work for you. So my final cloud is here. It also means at the end of the painting, if you think, well, you know something I could do with another cloud in the sky, it lets you go back in. And I almost think it gives an impression of almost like a backlit cloud, really. You know, almost like a backlit effect. Take it over the sun. This hard line I've got here, if I horizontally stroke that across, it takes it out. Now that little bit of light that it's removed is the yellow paint coming off. Looks gorgeous. It really suits the picture, and don't be afraid of that, folks. You can manipulate these clouds as much as you want. Now, when the chat goes quiet, that means that you're working, which is brilliant. Let me zoom back a little bit, folks. I'll leave you to fiddle with your clouds for a couple of seconds, alright? A couple of minutes. And if you look at that, you can create some gorgeous looking skies. I love how you can sort of lift off paint in almost a diagonal here, just by using primary colours. Because we've got a base down, it works a treat. It really does. Someone's lost connection. And Joanne Parkin's got no sun. Is that a newspaper or a physical sun? What you can do, you can, like I say, use a lift out brush and you can wash out the sun, but the sky works without the sun, and you can put some white paint in, Joanne, a little bit later, so don't worry too much about that. And Sue Bowen has said she can't chat. I think you're working now, aren't you, Sue? You're okay now, aren't you? And Carol's got a tongue out. I'm not sure what Carol's doing. She's doing something. So if I zoom back on this, folks, it works without the sun, okay? It's a timing thing, but remember, you can watch this back at any time. This is exclusive for the 130 people that registered for this workshop. It's only for you to enjoy, okay? And I hope you're enjoying it. How are we finding this? Is it better than watching the news? So Andrew is asking what colours I used for the clouds. Okay, so there was 2 colours, all right, and these are the colours again. So a quick recap. So we've got blue and red, crimson, okay, or natural red in this case. It's more blue though, so watch out for that. Second colour was orange, so it's basically yellow and red together, all right. I'm fairly strong with your colour, and make a mess when you first do it. It looks messy when you first do it, but it'll grow on you. When we put some hills and some mountains into this, it'll improve with age. Like me, apparently. But the great thing is that you can continue to bring this back into play, this water, run it over the tissue, and you can just say, well actually that's a bit harsh, I want to soften the edge. Your biggest mistake is to be too wet with your brush. You need it just to be a damp brush, okay? So if you're not happy with your clouds, work back into them. Work back into them. Let me show you a few things that we can do to improve your clouds. Are you ready for this? You can smell the excitement again. So basically I want to clean the brush, size 10 remember. Give it 3 or 4 wipes over the tissue and even pinch the brush a little bit flat. Can we see it's gone a little bit flat? And on the bottom of your clouds, lay the brush almost flat to your paper. Let's get even closer because we can do that with this. We can get really close here, and that's one of the great things about this. And you can wipe up on an angle as it starts to dry, and it's lifting a bit of colour out. And can you see it's put light almost coming up? Now this is what we did on this side as well. Now if you want to emphasise this and make it come off even more, once you've had a bit of a scrub, you could use a bit of tissue and you could actually wipe it off only once it's dry, you know, at the background. So feel free to get a hairdryer and dry it off. So Jan's asking for some music. You've got to watch out for copyright, but it's I'd say put your own music on, because I have to be careful what I broadcast, and also there's some people that are struggling to hear a little bit as well. But I'm still here, folks. I'm still here when I go quiet. It's rare that I go quiet, but I do sometimes. And so that's a way of improving them, okay? But you're wiping with this edge of your brush. Water, tissue, and squeeze it, yeah? Damp brush, it needs to be a damp brush. You could also use this effect as well if you've got like a bit of a valley coming into your cloud. Can you see how that kind of comes down into a little dip here? Well, if you want to put a little bit of light there, you can tickle the edge of that and it takes a bit of the cloud off. So it's basically after it's dry, and that's the key thing to say here, folks. After it's dry, you can use the tip of that brush and you can tap it, damp brush, and you can even get a bit of tissue and give it a bit of a, and can you see it puts a little bit of light into it? So it's a way of adding layers into your clouds, and any bits you're not happy with, just stroke them away horizontally, blend them out, okay? It's a nice thing to do. I want to do a little bit of that just here as well, with some little bits of light coming down here, and just spend as much time as you want on this, folks. The great thing about this live streaming is we're not rushing, you know what I mean? And I apologise again for the late start, but I will blame somebody else for that. There we go. It's a fairly new technology, is live streaming, and it's always interesting to see. But remember, whatever happens, this entire demo is recorded, so you can watch it back again and again for you to enjoy. It's your picture. There we go. So yeah, fairly happy with that, folks. I'd say that I'm not happy with this hard line at the bottom here, so I'm just going to use a bit of a water on the brush to wash it out, basically. I'm there. So I can put as much effort as like into the picture and until I'm happy with how this thing's looking. The other piece you might want to improve is if you look at the top of the clouds, if you've got any definite hard edges like this one here, clean the brush, wipe it almost dry. You can lightly soften the edge as much as you need to, okay? So Patrick's saying, how can I wind back to the start? Well, I believe you can just basically click on the link that we sent you, I think, and you can go back and watch it from the beginning. But if not, don't worry, because by the end of the day this will be available for you all to watch, and you will get another link, another email to show you how to do that. Titivating clouds. You can see at the background a picture of London there, and a similar effect's been done with those clouds, but that's just using grey all the way. Okay, and if you look at the highlights there as well, these highlights, they were done with highlights lifting out, so similar kind of thing, folks, alright? But just take your time, that's the secret to this, really. There's no rush on all this. But by this point, just keep to the camera, the background should be nice and dry, which is great. And very shortly, we're going to paint in some hills and mountains across this picture. I'll mention this one to you as well, because quite often you'll see lighter clouds towards the base of the sky, more sort of horizontal. This is one of the occasions where you may decide to use a lift out brush, by the way, if you've got them. I'm not using one for this, we don't need it, but for those people that do have them, it's there for you. So if you want some light around here, if you clean that brush again and squeeze it so it's damp, lay it flat and do horizontal wipes across. And then get the tissue and gently do that. And put some light clouds in as well. Practice those first, folks, okay? It doesn't want too many. Do a small one or two. And this is around the yellow. Optional, of course. But I often think a few little lighter clouds around here, a very gentle wipe with a tissue, and it takes the paint off. If you take too much paint off, like possibly here, I can just use the brush and soften it back in again and leave it to dry naturally at that particular stage. So a few little horizontal wipes, it comes off so easy because it's yellow, and yellow is the easiest colour to get off. That's part of the reason why we went in so strong with the paint right at the beginning. That same effect, of course, would apply if you want to put some more light at the bottom of these clouds. Look. There we go. So it's just like it's the sun's kind of illuminating things. Now, we are going to do a bit of a giveaway as well, folks, through this workshop, well, through the live workshop streams. And basically, I mentioned the next painting that we're doing, which is on the 5th of April, which is a week tomorrow, and I promise there'll be no problems. Let's call them teething problems. And anybody that signs up to that workshop who was booked on this workshop, so only the names that booked today that sign up for the next one, you can do it online. We've got a nice giveaway for you, and the giveaway is going to be this painting here, all right, plus a couple of my DVDs, all right, and these will be sent out in the post anywhere in the world, we've got the Splashy Paint DVD, which we're giving away, which is on for 90 minutes, and that's got 9 painting lessons. And how to paint a snow leopard in watercolours. Not physically paint a leopard, but a picture of a leopard. And this painting as well. So anybody that signs up, that was on this workshop, that signs up for the next one, we'll send those out to you. And you'll be informed, obviously. We'll pick one person at random to do that, okay? So have a little think about that. How are we doing, folks? How are we getting on? And of course, to sign up to the workshop, you just go onto the website watercolour.tv. There's 115 people watching at the minute, which is great. We're getting towards the stage that we're going to put some mountains in this thing, and we're going to build the mountains up slowly. We're going to bring the mountains forward towards us, okay? So for this, I need a completely dry sheet of paper. I mean, mine is dry. It's been on here an hour now. It's been an hour since we've been painting, pretty much, and hopefully you've got a sky. If you did the lift out clouds and you're not happy with any of these, you can always put another cloud over the top at a later stage, and I will show you how to do that actually. So if you decided that you wanted to put any clouds in, I would say at a later stage, okay, if I zoom in a bit closer here, this one's optional, just while a few people are finishing up. A size 6 brush, which we've not used yet, a 5 or a 6, it's a smaller one. I've still got some of the colour left, so for the people that have not saw this thing from the beginning, that's the colour, that's the sort of purple and the blue and red mixture. Now if I want to put on a little cloud here, or maybe there actually, you can do a smaller version of what you've just done. I'd say that you don't need to do this, but it's optional. It hides all sorts of problems, and it puts a little bit of extra life into the picture if you wanted to do that, okay? So it's the same twist. Clean the brush in between picking up colours and put the orange within it as well. So you get that mixture of your two colours. Let's just get the camera so you can see that better, folks. Clean the brush, give it a couple of taps on the tissue again, 3 or 4 taps or whatever. Wipe the bottom, and then use the tip of the brush. If you get really close into that, so you can see the grain of the paper there, you can actually do this and you can soften them in. I'm taking my time with the clouds because I want people not to feel rushed on these things. So it's just as easy to use the smaller brush and to keep fiddling with the clouds and add as many or as few clouds as you want to at any stage through the picture, okay? It's all about the blending process, and that one fits quite nice just there. And of course it's left me a bit of a space over here now, so the problem is once you start doing this you end up putting more clouds than you probably needed. So a very tiny one just over here, look, maybe a little thin line just there. That's just like a little line, that one, just a thin line of the grey or the purple colour, nice and close for this one. Again folks, don't forget that you get in this, you'll be emailed a link that you can watch this at a later stage. So I'm putting some of the dark in just here, some of the orangey brown colour. Clean the brush, 3-4 wipes over that piece of tissue and lightly soften this thing in. Horizontal at the bottom again. Make sure you take those ends away. But the more you scrub, the more it lifts off, and that lift off is a lovely effect on these clouds. So it allows you to soften them in at any time, okay? And you can go back and you can do this as much as you want. There we go. So people struggle to do these clouds. It's quite a common problem. But hopefully this effect, this is a different way of doing it. It's a different way of doing it. Normally I'd say you have to do this all at the same time as the paper's wet from that initial wash, but You don't with this. You can be a bit more chilled out about it. Notice the softness. And somebody mentioned the workshop that was postponed, which was this Saturday. It was the red squirrel. It was the squirrel. The lighthouse was previous. It was this one. Where's the squirrel we were doing? There he is. There's the squirrel. That's been postponed to the 12th of July. Sunday the 12th of July. The one I should have been doing tomorrow at Mansfield in Nottinghamshire was the lighthouse. That's where I got my wires crossed. There we go, folks. So I'm softening away. Softening away. So it's giving me that nice effect of clouds. And if I zoom back on the entire sky, we can see we've got a relatively nice looking sunset there. Vibrant sunset as was advertised. Beautiful. Take your time, folks. I'm going to leave you with that for a few minutes just to get your breath and catch up. We shall be having a bit of a break at some point as well, so you can grab a sandwich or something like that, and I'll give you a time on that one. It'll probably be around the sort of 1 o'clock to 1:30. We'll have a bit of a break. All right. How are we doing, folks? Leave me some chitter chatter. Let me know how you're doing. I'll just quickly mention as well, you can see in the bottom corner of the screen, bottom left, a little bit of a logo for Watercolour.tv. That's the video on demand service that I've had for about 12 years. It was the original one, and it's there for you to enjoy and paint along at home. So if you get yourself onto the memberships to that, you can enjoy that. So someone just mentioned the squirrel was lovely. Yes, well, you can see the whole squirrel now. I'll pop that on there. There will be a video on how to do this. We shall be doing a live animal workshop over the next couple of months as well, folks, so watch this space. All right, so there will be a workshop on not necessarily the squirrel, but on an animal of some kind. I'm planning to do a lot of these if there's interest. There's been a lot of interest so far. The next one is a bluebell. This is not the picture, but this is a bluebell meadow with a waterfall. That's a painting that's in my book, Watercolour for the Absolute Beginner. That's not the picture that we're doing, so don't worry. But I just want to show you that we shall be doing a woodland, a nice bluebell wood with a footpath and a bit of a river, but certainly not that one, folks. Okay, everything we're doing on here is all brand new stuff, all right, for you to enjoy. Someone's lost the sun. That's a bit careless, isn't it? How did you lose your sun? Oh, you mean the sun as in the right shining sun? Again, you can wash the paint off. I mean, you can see how easy this came off with a damp brush and a bit of tissue. So if you wanted to get, it might not be as crisp as that sun, but if you get a number 6 brush, what I'll do actually, just to do a bit of a demo on that, while people are finishing up, I'm going to put some yellow on that paper just there, just this little scrap paper, and I'll quickly dry that off for you, and I'll show you how you can take the sun out. So in a fashion, that's basically what you've already done behind the yellow. I'm just going to sort of rest that somewhere. Let's see if we can pop it so it doesn't fall. Pop it up there. So if you didn't quite get the sun, but you wanted to do something similar, if you get some dry kitchen paper, the smaller brush, you do want a fair bit of water for this, okay? So what I'll say to do is just do that and give it a bit of a shake rather than actually dry the brush on the tissue, and rest on your paper and do a swirl. And you can put as much time as you like into this, but you'll see how easy it comes off. Now you can put a bit of care into that. You can give it a soften and a tap, and you can see that you can get a sun that way. Now obviously if you're working in between clouds, it's a way that you can do it as well. One thing that some of you might want to do is that you can zoom in close to the sun here, look. And if you clean that smaller brush, wipe it almost dry, you can go in and you can lightly soften the edge, or you can wash off any bits. You can make it pure white basically if you want to. As long as you give it a dab with tissue, the paint comes off pretty well, and you can smooth it off. I didn't get mine down to the pure white paper, but it's not a bad thing if it's got a bit of colour. There it is. We shall be reflecting that in the water a little bit later, okay? Does that make sense? The thing is that if you're not happy with your sky, we're still in depression stage of the painting, so don't worry. Don't worry. It'll improve, it'll grow on you. It'll grow on you. What we can do is always go back at any time and fiddle around with them. You can have as much faffing and fiddling as you want on your picture. Okay, it's your picture to do. Now hopefully you've enjoyed fiddling with your sky. Next stage is to put in some landscape, and I'm going to use some masking tape for this. I want to take a piece of tape that's long enough to go across the picture. Okay, masking tape is the better option, but it's important to remove the stickiness. So if you do this a good 4 or 5 times, stick it to your trousers. Stick it to your trousers, run your hands over it, wipe off the moisture from the brow, run it over the tape. Really do a good job of removing some of that stickiness. And below the clouds, probably about 1/4-ish up, it depends how much space you've got, but try and avoid the clouds. I'm going to say probably about there, so that's relatively low down. Making sure the line is fairly straight, of course. So I'd say that's probably 1, 2, yeah, it's about 1/4. But if your clouds are higher, you can be higher up, it doesn't matter, but 1/4 at the bottom is enough to give us some water, and we'll get to the water a little bit later on. Make sure it's a clean line and press it down. Stick it down well. If anybody's watching the video through Watercolour TV, that's how you'll be seeing the video for watching it back when we send you the private link, which you'll get at the end of the workshop. Someone's just emailed me asking how they can watch this back. You'll be sent another email with a link of how to view this video, just for you guys, yeah? Alright, so that's nicely stuck down, and your paper should be nice and flat at this stage if it's a nice, oh, there's the tip, if it's a nice quality paper. So press that down, fairly straight-ish. I'm going to paint in the first bit of the mountains, or the hills. So I get close into the bottom of this picture now. Paper is nice and dry. And I'm going to simply use the size 10 brush again. The big brush has pretty much done its job, so I'm using a 10 or a 12. Nice and clean, nice and clean. Wipe off the excess. We'll probably come back to the clouds and put some highlights in a bit later. We'll have a look at that for you. So I'm wiping off the excess, even giving it a bit of a shake like before. And I want to mix pretty much the same colour really. So I'm reactivating the paint here, which was the blue and the red. So I'm just going to pop a bit more blue in there and a touch of the red, but not too much red, as you've discovered. I'm sure that some of you have put too much red in. It's dead easy to oversaturate with crimson or natural red. So this kind of purpley colour, not necessarily too strong, okay? Not necessarily thick paint for this one. So I'm adding a touch of water to it. Test it on a scrap, folks. That's kind of the colour I'm interested in. This kind of purpley blue colour here, look. Alright, this is over the top of the yellow. Make sure the tape is stuck down well. I want to use this brush with a bit of a nervous shake because I want to get some character. I don't want to paint over the mountains if I can help it, but I'll try mountains over the clouds even. I don't want to paint over clouds is what I'm sort of saying here. So I want to work my way around this thing, and I'm basically going to go up here. You can smell the fear. Now the paper's dry, and we'll come down here. Watch out for pyramids. So if you can try and get Lake District, what I'm thinking here, Cumbria. I'm going to put some smaller ones in the middle. Notice the width of that line. It's not a thin line like this, is it? It's a wide line. We'll go up, bring it down, and we'll revisit that edge and put some character into them. And I'll work down probably to about halfway. Again, I'm watching out for any definite sort of pyramids that may be appearing in the picture. Now that's about halfway down. Clean my brush really well, really well. You can hear the splashing water. Give it a couple of wipes over the tissue. That's enough, couple of wipes, yeah. Put the brush here and drag that down towards the tape so we get the misty background, and this is just the background hills because we're going to put some more on later. So I'm basically dragging the colour down. Now my brush has run out of energy, so it's back in the water, couple of runs, and then from this side. So basically I'm sort of smoothing the paint down. And if you notice, if I move the picture closer, can you see I'm putting the brush right to the edge as I do this? So I'm going back to the edge and I'm actually moving the paint down as I work on the picture here. Does that make sense? And I can revisit this, and I can go up to the edge here, look, I can pull that paint down. Revisiting where you've already been, smoothing it down as much as you can. So if you've got a hard line where the grey meets the highlight, just put your brush on and just drag it, look, put it in and smooth it down. Smooth the colours together. And then create that nice soften. And you can go back just as you did with the clouds, and you can revisit this and you can sort of lean back a little bit and think, well, you know something, I want to give that a bit of a soften here and so on. But you've created a bit of a valley there, if you like. We shall work over the top of this and put some more work into this once you've got it in. I'll just zoom in a touch closer for you so you can see this. Don't worry if you get any bits seeping down here, because that does actually happen. It's a normal part of the picture for that to do its thing. This is just, these are the misty ones, and what's interesting actually is the fact you used almost a purple, because that was the colour, but you've got grey, and that's because purple and yellow make grey. So it's one of those processes where it kind of all works together, if you know what I mean. Now, is this better than watching the news? Let me know how you're getting on with these hills, folks, in the comments. We shall have a break soon, a coffee break, etc. And then we'll resume. And again, don't forget, folks, if anybody who is on this workshop signs up to the next one, which is on the 5th, we'll be giving away 2 DVDs, Leopard and the Splashy Paint, and this picture. So this picture will be sent out to you in the post for one person. I remember there's only 120, 30 people on the workshop, so there's plenty of opportunities to win this, folks, and we'll send it anywhere in the world, as long as the post is still working, that is, of course. Marvellous. So I'll zoom back on the whole picture. So if all goes pear-shaped at the minute, if you was to chop your painting off there, you've got a bit of a panoramic scene. It works. It's a nice thing to do. We shall be revisiting the clouds in a few minutes, okay? I know that someone just sent me an email asking how we can do a little bit of TLC on the clouds. Well, we can do that for you very shortly. If anyone's not realised, by the way, you can view the video full screen. Someone's asked me the question. In the bottom right corner of the window that you're viewing on, it allows you to click on the little icon and it will enlarge it to full screen if you've not already. So if you're watching it on your smart TV, your iPad, your laptop, etc. So take your time smoothing this thing down, get that nice transition so it nicely smooths in and it kind of fades down to nothing at the bottom there. But I want to mention how to add a few more highlights. Now the sky is dry and it's had a bit of time to settle in, I can see a few areas where I think I would want to put a little bit of light. And I think it's on in some of the dips in the clouds where they go in and then back out again. Put some little highlights in, and I want to show you how to do that. It is purely optional, folks, but it's another way of slightly improving the sky for those who aren't 100%. So I'll clean the brush. This is the 6 brush. I'll wipe it 2 or 3 times over the tissue, and I want to show you this really close up now. So I'm using the tip of the brush, and I'm going to go in one of these little drops like here, and a slight little wiggle with the brush down into the little valley here. A little bit of a wiggle going off. And then a bit of tissue just to give it a tap. Can you see it takes a bit of light out? Now if that light looks too harsh, if it's too much like a line, this is how you smooth it in. Minus the tissue, just the brush. Do that. Pull it back, smooth it back. I'll do it in slow-mo. Smooth it back so you can see how it lightly, and then leave that to dry. Now what you're seeing here is the light reflecting on the water, but when that dries it'll settle in. Let me show you this again, okay? So first thing is clean the brush, give it 2 or 3 wipes on the tissue, use the tip of the small brush, and you go in and you lightly twist on the edge down in the little valley. These are optional, okay? Like so. Now you take that bit of tissue, dry tissue, and you give it a bit of a tap. Now that takes off a very harsh, solid line. So what you do is you clean your brush again, you wipe it almost dry, and without the tissue, just basically just in one direction lift off and drag away, and it just creates that nice effect of a little bit of a light. It puts layers. This is in front of this and so on, and for me that's an enjoyable thing to do. And now obviously the side of your cloud you put this on depends on where your sun is. If you got the sun, if you didn't get the sun, then you can stick it on any side really. So over here, 2 or 3 taps. I can see one coming here. I've kind of already got one, but I can emphasise it. So I'm using the tip of a 6 brush or a 5, or whichever you're comfortable with, and I'm twisting it down like a little wriggle, and then you give it a tap like that, and it puts that gorgeous highlight in, and it makes such a difference. If you're not happy with the highlight, if it's too much like a line, clean the brush again, wipe it almost dry, and then lightly pull the paint away from it, and let it dry naturally. For me, it's all about the sky on this workshop, okay? That's what it's all about. And as many or as few of these as you like. I want to pop another one here as well. It's quite addictive doing this, if I'm honest, you know. Give it a bit of a... Give it a little bit of a tap there. So again, a little bit of a wriggle where the sun would catch. A bit of a tap. Now that's a very definite line. So if I go back in with a damp brush but no tissue, and I can lightly pull that away, softening it in, or even pulling the colour back from the opposite side, but you let that dry naturally. It makes it look that little bit more dramatic as far as the clouds are concerned. Something to have a little play with if you want to. It's all about learning, folks, you know. I mean, for a lot of you, I know this is your first watercolour painting that you've ever done. So for a lot of you, it's very much a learning curve. And remember, a bit later we're going to put some boats on. Okay, something that you might want to get yourself at when we have a bit of a break soon, folks, is have a think about having a rummage around and see if you can find some kind of a plastic card, credit card or something, store card, and a craft knife if you've got one, or a fairly sharp knife from the kitchen, but ideally a craft knife because they're nice and sharp, or a pen knife or something like that, because we're going to put some light into this thing a little bit later on. And of course you can get yourself some clean water, because I imagine your water's a little bit on the muddy side, yeah? You can't go wrong with this, folks, really, can you? It's just nice to spend time, and the great thing about doing these live workshops is it gives us time to play around and zoom in close. I mean, that's such a big feature that you can't normally do on these sort of things, but having the opportunity to get nice and close in and use a camera for zooming in really quite close, it's a great way of allowing us to teach while people are at home. Let me know how we're doing with these mountains, won't you, folks, when you get a chance. I think it's also quite important from time to time just to walk away from your picture a little bit and come back to it and look at it with fresh eyes, which we'll be doing soon. I'm going to put a few highlights in these mountains now in a similar way that we put them in the clouds just then. The ones in the clouds were optional though, I think you know that, don't you? You don't have to do them. Okay, so if I zoom in close to the hills in the mountains, and I'm using the same brush, the number 6 brush for this, okay? And again, a piece of tissue, dry preferably. Clean the brush again and give it 3 or 4 wipes. So basically, if you imagine here, where you've got the up and the downs, where you've got a peak, if you come down from that peak and scrub the paint a little bit forward and back, see the forward and back? And then take the tissue and wipe it out. Can you see it? Put some light in. Now I'm going to put a few of these in and I'll show you how to soften them, okay? So again, in the water, through the tissue. Now if I was to do that on that side, because that's where I would imagine the light would be cast in from the sun, and maybe a little one just here. This is from the tip of some of the peaks in the centre of your painting here. And then we get the tissue and we take the colour out. Now if they look a bit like lines, just the same way that you did in your clouds highlights, clean the brush again, wipe it almost dry, and then pull the brush back on the harsh line, but don't dab with tissue, just soften the highlighting. You're basically smoothing the paint out a little bit, and it's a way of adding a little bit of light into the hills, the mountains, especially into that distance. And what you do is you leave that to dry. It's like using a crayon, isn't it? You're sort of scribbling and colouring in the hills, and it's surprising how you can put a little bit of texture on. I mean, you can do that on some of the larger peaks. Clean the brush 3 or 4 wipes on the tissue. Add a little bit of a highlight just here from the peak. Take it out with tissue. Smooth it in if you need to. Optional, of course. It's up to you to decide how much you do. Now over this side I could probably do another one, maybe coming down here. Take it out with the tissue and then soften it back in away from itself. It's basically putting the light in. So wherever you've got a bit of a change in direction, like here, and a peak, it's a great way of adding these lights. And because there's no sketching involved, everyone's got something different, which is nice. So basically I'm moving the paint back. Beautiful. If you've got a larger peak like here at this side, you could come down from the tip and you could sort of change direction. So can you see the curve I'm doing? Now when I take that off, it just looks like a line. But again, water, tissue, put the tissue away, you can smooth it across and leave it to dry on its own. And you can soften any hard lines. Sometimes you can put little bits going that way as well. Like it's catching a bit on the other side. You can see that little bit of a sort of raised effect. It really makes a difference to this. But it's non-destructive. Everything you're doing here is not destroying your paper. So you don't have to worry if you've accidentally removed a little bit too much. Over this side as well here, I would say maybe just something coming down from that peak there would be a nice bit of spit and polish, like it's catching the light. At the end of the day, you could just repaint the entire mountains if you wanted to. And like I said to you a little bit earlier, folks, these are just the background. We shall be adding more to these. And if all we had was that, I think that's a nice little picture. But obviously we're going to put a nice yacht in here, a boat, some kind of a boat, and we're going to put some trees and reflections and various things in this picture to bring the picture alive. Beautiful. You can't go wrong with this, can you, eh? And don't forget, you can watch this back at any time because this entire thing is being recorded for you. We've been painting now for about an hour and a half-ish, and we're going to be putting a little line of mountains in here, or hills, just in front of this, and then we're going to have a 20-minute or so break. Is that a good idea? Would you like a bit of a break so you can get yourself a coffee or a pint of vodka or whiskey or wine or gin and brandy or shandy or something? Let me know in the chat if you'd think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to stretch your legs for 2 minutes. It's also nice to walk away from your painting as well, I think, because it's just one of those things that just gives you a bit of time to spend a penny or two, let's say. Okay, so what we're going to do now, just to finish up before we have a break, folks, is I'm just going to pop a line down here. Now for this, I want to use the size 10 brush again, and I want to make the colour a lot thicker. Now for the people that have got natural grey, and I know a lot of you will have because I've sold it to you, yes, a toilet break Karen is on its way very soon, don't you worry. What we're going to do is I want to mix the grey, but if you've got natural grey, which is my most popular colour, it's one of the biggest selling colours that we do, you could use that at this point. I want to mix the grey for those that don't have it. So basically it's the water, size 10. Don't forget to wipe off the excess on the side as well. And what we'll do here is we'll pop a little bit of water in there, but not a huge amount. And we'll take a nice thick blob of blue, fairly strong at this point. This is the darkest colour so far, folks, so it's a heavier mix. Tiny bit of red, so you get that slight purpley violet tinge, okay? Now that's probably got a bit too much red, so I'll put a bit more blue in, and then add little bits of yellow and mix it in, and you'll see how it starts to go grey. The more yellow that you add, the more towards a grey. If it's coming out a bit browny mauvey, just put a bit more blue in and you'll see that you start to get more grey. But something that's quite dark and also quite heavy, if I do this, you can see it's not dripping. It's quite a strong colour. Got the piece of tissue here. Oh, and I should mention that as well as winning the picture and the 2 DVDs, this tissue is also going to be won by somebody. I will make sure that it's had some Dettol on it. So Keith has finally worked it out to do the chatting, so welcome to the chat, Keith. It just makes it more interactive. It's nice that people are sending comments through. Wipe off the excess for this colour, okay? Now, let me get a bit closer in for you so you can see this. I'm going to work my way across the picture. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a smaller but quite strong, look how dark that colour is, a much smaller hillside. I'm not going to go across, it's going to work down, it's going to work smaller. So as you come down, it's going to be nice and small, okay? Moving all the way across, of course, you can put some ups and downs here. These aren't hills or anything, these just like a sort of, you know, a bit of a darkness in the foreground. As it gets to the centre, you can almost taper it off and then pick it back up again over this side. But if you make it taller, as you get towards the side of the pictures, left and right side, it'll help the composition, make sure it's nice and strong. And if I come back here and use the tip of the brush and put some vertical lines, lots of them, you can almost get the impression of a distant pine forest. Now, you might prefer to change brushes and go for the smaller one at this point, okay? Still using the same colour. It's up to you which brush you use here. So a nice big chunk of tall trees silhouetting against the sunset, exactly like you'd imagine it to be. Sorry, there's the focus. The focus is back now. We did lose the focus. I think that might be... Someone's just mentioned that they've just worked out to get full screen. You know something? I think it's a learning curve for everybody this, you know, and it's something that if you stick with us, we'll obviously, yourselves and me will learn how to, you know, streamline the process. It's like the Chancellor of the Exchequer's recently been saying, you know, there's lots of new things being put in place at the minute for people. It's a brave new world, folks, and well done to the 120 odd people that signed up for this. You are part, officially, of the brave new world here. Keep putting little vertical flicks at the top of this. And can you see I've kind of tapered it off? And of course that will be the same if I zoom over here. Be the same over this side as well. Great comment there from Andrea. Yeah, you can plug your laptop into your TV with HDMI lead. If you've got a smart TV, you can also watch it live, of course, through there. If you've got the internet built into your TV, which lots of people do nowadays. So I'm just popping these sort of tall trees at the sides. It's a combination of using, well, it's whichever brush works for you really. If I zoom in a bit closer, I'm going to take a fairly big brush as well and just put the start of these trees in. Think about different heights, but as it comes in, just do the odd one. Just do the odd one every so often. We shall pop a little bit more detail on those a little bit later on. And of course you've got the smaller brush, the finer brush, if you want to make them a little bit more refined. There we go. And you can spend as much time as you like on fiddling with those. I won't do too many necessarily, because I don't want it to be saturated in trees here, but just a few little bits. Back over this side, popping a few on now. Look. So that's something you can take your time with, folks. We shall pop a bit more detail if I come back a little bit so you can see the entire sort of line, like so. And what I want to do now, folks, is I want to very carefully pull the tape down. Can you see I'm taking it down? Slowly. Now if you want to do this with a hairdryer, you can heat it up at the back so it sort of loosens glue. But if you do it steady, if it starts to rip, just stop, pause for a second and go the opposite way. But as long as you pull it down, you should have a pretty clean edge. If you've got any paint seeping down the back of that tape, don't worry, because I'm going to show you how to fix that a little bit later on. But what we do have at this point is a gorgeous sky, mountains, and a line of dark trees in front of this. Look at the recession, the distance you've created even at this early stage, okay? Which is a wonderful thing to have achieved in a little short space of time, folks. What I'm going to say now is, I want to zoom back out so you can see me talk to you now. Okay, we're going to have a break at this point, folks. So far in the painting, we've been using 3 brushes. We used someone's asked me to do a quick recap. So, size 20 brush to the sky, which was the big brush. Wet the entire sheet of paper. The yellow went in first from about halfway all the way down. We added a bit of red to the yellow to make this orange, which started not quite at the top and came down until it mixed with the yellow. I put a little bit of that across the bottom as well. Then I added some blue to the mix to make this kind of grey purple colour, which came down from the top. And I added a few horizontal lines in the water. Then we put the sun in. Now if you remember the sun, there was a piece of kitchen paper wrapped around a round coin, and we just stamped it on, and that gave that impression of the sun there. Dry it off, and then we was into the clouds. And I remember the colours for the clouds, I've still got them here actually. There was the purple, which was the blue and the red, and there was the orange, which was the yellow and the red. Alright, and we kind of mixed on the paper, and then we put the highlights in, and that's where we got to so far with those mountains. And we're ready to move on. So hopefully, if we're zooming close to these sort of mountains and hills, you can see that we've got these kind of little vertical lines, which we did loads of them. If you've got the odd one or two, it'll look more like a fence post rather than a... So you keep doing those, and we went from the size 10 brush into the size 6 brush, okay? Now, the big brush has done its job. The size 21 has done its job, so I'll put that one away. He's finished with. He's going to be mothballed for a little bit. And we're going to be using these 2 brushes. And on the information that we sent out to you, we did mention that we would possibly be using something like a rigger brush. Now a rigger brush is a long, thin, pointy brush. This one's optional, and what I mean by that is because if you look at my number 6 brush, you can see it's quite pointy. Now, I have to say this, not everybody's brush is going to be as pointy as that. This is quite a new one, alright? You might have some of our branch and detail brushes, and we are still sending orders. As long as the post office is functioning, we are sending orders, which you can order from the website, watercolour.tv, of course. This is the small and the large branch and detail brush. Basically, it's a rigger brush on the inside. If we get the focus to come back, there you go. And it's surrounded by a round brush. Now, the bit on the inside is what I'm interested in. A rigger brush is the same as this but without that, so it's exactly the same brush. So if you want to use a rigger brush for this, then absolutely fine to do that, okay? And I'm going to use this now. I'll show you both. I'll show you how you could use a size 6 or a branch and detail brush. So if you're using a branch and detail brush, you clean the brush or rigger brush. So this is rigger or detail brush. Clean it, wipe off the excess, give it a bit of a shake on the side. Now, if you're using the choice of the 2 brushes, doesn't really matter which one you use. I'm using the large one here, or just a rigger brush of some kind, or even a little small brush, it doesn't matter, or a pointy number 6 brush. And basically I want to mix up a nice dark colour, so I'll take the blue and I'll pop a bit of red with it. Now that's a lot of red, so I want to wipe some of that off. Tiny bit of red, you get that kind of purple, and then you take the yellow and you pop the yellow in, so you get some kind of a dark colour coming through here. Now whether it's a number 6 brush or a rigger brush or a branch and detail brush, my advice to you is to rotate it through your fingers like so as you draw it over the edge of your palette, so you get that nice pointy brush, okay? Does that make sense? And then we can pop in just a couple of slightly more detailed tall trees, okay? Now I want to get as close as I can to this. I'm loving the fact we can zoom in close here, folks. I really am. So I'm basically going to paint in some quite distinctive tall trees. And I spend a good portion of the summer teaching painting holidays in the Lake District. And that's where the inspirations come from for this picture. Once you've put in these tall lines, notice that that's about halfway up the mountain. Use the same brush and you flick one side, working towards the point, and do the opposite side. Nice trees to do, classic sort of cedar, sort of pine trees. And you can do as many or as few of these as you like. Make sure the colour's nice and strong for doing this. So you put the little vertical lines in first, and then you do one side. I always think if you put a few little sort of dots at the top as well, just a few little sort of taps at the top, it's a nice thing to do, and it really gives the impression as though you've got this massive trees. And some of these ancient woodlands around Cumbria and the lakes got these huge, massive, tall trees going off. So you can do as many or as few as you like. And I want to put a few of these on, different heights, of course. Someone's just emailed me and asked me, can I show it with a number 6 brush? Well, yeah, of course I can. Exactly the same technique. If your number 6 brush is nice and pointy like this one is. So you pick the paint up, you pop the line in. Notice, by the way, how I'm holding the brush. Can you see I'm right on the end of it and I'm resting as I do this? And you sort of flick out on one side and then you do the opposite side, gradually getting thinner with a few little sort of dots at the top, so you can see those nice trees. And you can do as many or as few as you like, depending on how you want to group it together. And what a difference that makes. It's lovely to see them. If I zoom back a little bit, you can see them in context. It's giving scale, isn't it? It's pushing the mountains back. And again, for those people that are using natural grey, just use that. It works just the same, okay? Now I want to do a few more of these. I'll do them with a number 6 brush. If you've got a rigger brush, it'd be the same. Let me pop over this side and do some over here for you as well. What I'm going to say to you now, folks, is you've done the tricky bit of this picture, which is the sky. You should be very satisfied, and you 100 and so people that have been doing this workshop, you're the people that are the brave folks. You're really embracing this, aren't you? So a couple of nice lines going up, flicking out from the base with the tip of the brush. There's no reason why you can't rotate the board as well to get a nicer angle to the And again, a few little sort of taps at the top gives scale, don't it? But in context of all these lines that you put in earlier, all these, it just looks right. I could put some short ones in at the top, look, little bits of... like so. So you can sort of mix them all in, get them all working together. As long as the colour's nice and strong, the darker the better. Common question I get asked a lot is about grey, and they'll say, what's the difference between natural grey and Payne's grey? Because Payne's grey is a very popular colour, as I'm sure you know. Payne's grey is basically pure black, okay? It's made from a pigment called bone black, alright? And I've actually got a tube here of Payne's grey, because I want to show people, because it's a nice chance while people are painting the trees just to show you the difference between the two. So I'm just going to pop a little blob of Payne's grey, which is this one here, okay? This Payne's grey. And this one is natural grey, which is my own colour, okay? Now natural grey was my first colour that I devised about 12 years ago. And that's what started the natural collection. There's 14 colours in total in the natural collection, alright? And the story behind natural grey is it came from when I started teaching in the late 90s, so quite a young age. I was sort of 17, 18 when I started teaching. That's really young to teach art, I know, but it's something I'd wanted to do. And I went in and I was teaching people to do exactly what we've done today. Use 3 colours to paint pictures, to paint watercolour pictures, alright? Just using 3 colours. Pretty much the same colours that we're using today. And what I soon realised is that when you mix grey, it's the most common colour because it's the colour of shadows. And you'll see that in the second half of this picture as we go through. So what you'll see is that to get the same grey every time, the same tone of grey can be quite challenging. So if you put too much blue in it versus too much red and so on. So natural grey was devised to get it ready to paint from the tube. But this is the reason why we use natural grey, because if you look at these 2 blobs here, the one on the right, if I put some water with it, is Payne's grey. Now if you saw that, you said to somebody what colour is that, they'd probably say black. So that's Payne's grey, okay? This one's natural grey. And you can see quite a difference if I wiggle that so it's nice and thick. Can you see the difference between the two? Now if you look at the 2 colours, you say that that's quite blue, it's quite a cold colour. Now to answer somebody's question, it's about 67% blue. Did you not know that? And that's what makes that grey work. Look how it falls back and this one comes out at you. So for painting shadows and recession, if you use Payne's grey for doing those hills, they'll be jumping out at you. And that's why we use natural grey. You can get it online, folks, alright? Or you can mix it from these 3 colours, like we've just been doing here. So a few more little bits of detail, folks. I'm going to pop in a couple more trees. And 50 shades of grey, that's what you get. So you can see how addictive it is. If you want to live life on the edge of your seat today, brace yourselves. I want to pop in a tall tree that goes above the mountains, eh? What do you think to that? Branching out, yeah? Now I'm using the number 6 brush here, but you'll probably find it easier if you have got a rigger brush, because you can get a finer line. Works nice. It's nice to see these trees. Let's just come back a couple of clicks on the zoom. There you go. It starts to make a scene, don't it? A nice kind of landscape, distant scene. Beautiful. Got goosebumps. That might be because it's cold in here, maybe. Someone's craving chocolate. Maybe we should put a giant M&M on the top. In fact, that'd do as your son. That could be a son, not a giant M&M. Now if you're using a rigger brush, same process, 3 primary colours. This is a branch and detail brush I'm using here because I want to get a couple of individuals of these trees. As I'm working, I'm just going to choke on a peanut. This is me coughing to peanuts, not anything else. Alright. So I'm just going to paint in a few individuals, 3 or 4 towards the centre. So 1, 2, 3, 4 there. If I just come back a little bit, you can see where I've put them. And again, I can make them look as though they're more of a standalone tree. A few dots at the top and so on. There we go. And it's interesting, it's very easy to give up on painting if you find it's not working, but my advice to you is to stick with it until you get to the end. If you struggle to do these fine trees, turn the board over and then do the opposite side that way, because they can be quite tricky things to do if you're facing the wrong way. So feel free to rotate your board around if you need to. There we go. So we can see we've got a few individuals in the centre. I can pop in a few little sort of dots and spots around them with the same brush, little vertical lines, put some sheep in the field. And if you really want to live life dangerously, why not put some birds in your sky? We've got to do the classic bird, of course, which is the one overlapping the sun. Practice your birds. A bit of an eagle there, look. I don't know whether you can see there's a bit of a gap between the 2 lines. People practice birds on the side of the paper, you see it at workshops all the time. So a few birds hanging around, it's quite effective. Again, just that little bit we zoomed in on. It makes a nice little scene, don't it, actually? Like that. It's a bearded chuff, that. I've never seen one. They're going to come out on an evening. So a few people are asking me at the break about how come I can't access the chat. I think if you're watching this on your phone, I'm not sure whether you can access the chat. Maybe you guys in the chat could help each other out while I'm doing the painting here. But if you view it on a web browser and you're viewing it on the smaller screen, then the chat's down the side. If you've got full screen, I would say that you probably can't access the chat, but I mean, that's okay. We're doing the painting here. People are emailing me as well, and there's a link to the email address in the email that was sent out to you. So please feel free to keep in touch. I'm just going to paint in a couple more of these trees and then we're going to move on. Beautiful. Now, it's a really nice stage to be at this because you've done all the hard stuff, the sky, but I hope you enjoyed doing that sky because it was nice to use the different technique there. I'm just going to paint in a large, that for me wants breaking up on this corner, but it's up to you, each person's got something different here. Again, so I'll put the line on and then flick out. You've got to know the difference between a pine tree or a cedar tree and a toilet brush. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. I'm just going to turn that on the side a second for doing this side. Again, but these branch brushes are gorgeous and we are shipping them all over at the minute, so if you do like them and you want to get hold of them, then click on the go to the art shop on the website. Nice. So this is what you often see at workshops. You'll see a pine tree, or you'll sometimes see the classic where you put a line on and then just put a few bits at the top like that. That's obviously a toilet brush. Obviously a used toilet brush, but a toilet brush nonetheless. Now if we zoom back a little bit here, folks, we can see that we've got that nice line of trees. You know something, you can keep adding as many of those or as few as you like, can't you? You can keep going. Maria says she's got a white box on the screen. Maybe refresh your browser possibly. I've seen a white box bottom left, which is a bit of a logo, but not anything else. Live streaming is interesting because it's still in its early stages, you know, as a medium, and of course it all depends how many people are got good internet connections, all that kind of thing. So if you refresh your browser and click on the link again on the email, brings you back into the video. Once it's done, it will be uploaded, and a link will be sent to you to watch this again and again, okay? So if you keep an eye on your emails, you can see that. Magic. Okay, so the top half of the picture is complete, sorted, jobs are good, and we're going to work down here. We're going to put the water in. I'm going to paint a boat in the picture as well, with a mast. Now I did mention a couple of things before we had our break. I said if you get a chance to pick up a craft knife or some kind of sharp knife and some kind of plastic card, flexible card, we can use that to put in the mast on. You can paint it on, but we can use that. It's a way of doing it, okay? So we're working down at the bottom of the picture now. I'm just letting a few people just kind of catch up on the trees. A few people are still working on the trees, and then we'll continue to do the water reflections. We're going to reflect the trees. Maria's got it sorted. Technology is interesting. This morning was interesting because we've tested this a dozen times, this live stream, make sure everything was smooth and everything was working. And then this morning, about 8:30, we start to broadcast live, and of course it doesn't work, and the phones went crazy. And it was like NHS Direct, but it was interesting. We got there, folks, and like I say, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for being adventurers in this new world and doing a live stream, so well done. Someone's put a comment, how can I tidy up my bottom? Okay, well that's getting a bit too personal for a painting workshop, so we'll stop there. Do you mean the bottom edge where you might have possibly got some seepage? So I want to ask you the question, do you mean seepage? Yes, seepage. Okay, so, right. If you've got seepage, the first thing to do, apart from a Seer Doctor, is to get another bit of masking tape, long enough. Again, remove the stickiness. Stick it to your head, stick it to your trousers, and stick it just a little bit below where the seepage is, okay? And then go along with the dark colour to clean it up. Does that make sense? But we are going to put a reflection on, which will hide some of that anyway. But if you've got a lot of seepage, put the masking tape on, and then you can put a clean dark line, because it doesn't matter how wide this dark edge is, not at all. It doesn't matter. You can just work with it, alright? It's all part of the fun. Can't be wrong really, can you? So let's just give it 30 seconds and then we'll have a look at doing some reflections on this thing, okay? A few people just sorting out seepage. Lots of you booking the workshop for next week, the Bluebell Wood, so well done on that, folks. So, water then, reflections. It's all about this bottom section now, and we can pop the detail brush to one side, or the rigger brush if that's what you was using, and the picture is going to be made up of grey, grey and grey. So I'm using the number 6 brush here, and before we do any water, any reflections and ripples, I want you to practice the technique on a scrap piece of paper first. So first of all, that's the colour what I was using for doing this. It's all gone pretty much. So I want to mix some more of the grey, which of course is the blue, the bit of red, tiny bit of red, and then the yellow. Now I shall be refilling the yellow soon. It's getting a bit yucky. Put a bit of water with that. So basically that's the same colour what I've just used. I've just mixed a bit more because I ran out of it. That's got a green tinge to it. I don't know if you can see that on your screen. Well, a bit more red will help that. So if your grey's coming out too green, pop a bit of red with it and that will help. If it's coming out too purple, put the yellow with it and that'll bring it into the grey. But that colour is still quite strong. Now if you're using natural grey, then you could just use natural grey basically. Number 6 brush. Now when I mentioned practicing this technique, it's a technique that works better if you stand up, if I'm honest. I want to do it on some scrap paper for you first. Have a practice at doing this rather than just jumping in. We've got the tissue here. So I've picked up the colour. I'm holding the brush quite loosely, so towards the bottom really. And it's like it's more of a classic stance with your brush rather than twisting or detail, and it's doing this business. But a couple of taps on here to remove the colour does help to give a greater effect. And basically horizontal lines, hovering, and every so often touch your paper like this. Have a practice first. Imagine that is the ripple or the reflection below the trees. So imagine that's where the trees are here, and it's the reflection just below. But dry brush helps, so you can wipe off a big chunk of the colour. And it's, if I hold the brush this way, it might help to show you how I'm holding the brush forward and back. So I'm almost like I'm afraid to touch the paper as I do this. Have a practice at that first, folks, because two things need to happen. Horizontal, so important, and people do find the horizontal thing hard. So if you've got a piece of paper or something handy, what you can do, of course, is you can hold, in fact, if I zoom back a bit, sometimes this helps people. So you pick your paint up, wipe it off, you've got a piece of paper or something here which you can hold in the left hand or right hand, or whichever one suits you, and it's a way of not using it as a ruler but as a guide to give that bit of ripple. It's a definite technique, and it's a technique that some people do struggle with, and the problem people get with this is they get the classic windscreen wiper effect where they go a bit curvy, or they go on the wrong angle like that. It's got to be straight. Now on this picture it's pretty easy to get the straight line because you've got a relatively straight line there, and you've also got one at the bottom as well, so it does kind of make sense, and it does sort of work. You know, it's basically in this gap. Now I'm only interested in doing these just below where the dark is, not all the way down the picture. I'll do it first in a couple of minutes, let you have a bit of a practice it first. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit closer here and I'll show you this, and then you can take your time. So I'll pick up the colour. It's quite a strong grey, it's the same colour we just used. Got the tissue, give it 1, 2, 3 wipes should do you. I want to use the point of that number 6 brush, okay? And basically my plan is to hover. I am obviously stood up for this. If you stood up on a desk, what you could do is you could be working like this, sort of looking down at your picture. That's not a bad way of actually doing that one, for the people that are new to this, of course. Now this is going to go all the way across and it's just below the tree line, okay? So I've got two things. I've got a dry brush, I'm holding the brush quite loosely. I've got the tissue in case I start crying. It's emotional, this bit. Dab off the excess on the tissue and then hover. When you've built up enough confidence, touch your paper. Now, some people find it easier to do it in one direction. I'm going forward and back with this. Can you see the effect? Let me get close in. It's basically dry brush. Now you can do it in one direction. I think that's probably a bit easier. Now it's only matching the height of this mass. So I'm not going any higher than what's there. Pick up the colour, a couple of taps, and do the horizontal lines. Don't worry about the tall trees, the pine trees, we'll get to those later. We're just reflecting the majority of the... And you can do it in little bits. But I'm sure you can see how the paint's going speckly. That is because I'm using a textured paper. It's a not surface paper, this one. This is this Matthew Palmer paper that you can buy online. And it's got a gorgeous texture to it. Now if you look at that, you can see it's just hundreds of little horizontal lines, but it gets less as it goes up towards the centre there. And that's exactly what I want to do. It starts to reflect the area. I can make it darker by picking up more colour, a couple of taps, and coming back to this area, adding more horizontal lines, especially from that edge, because that's where you get that lovely effect of reflection come from. You can see that, can't you? Water is just made up of two things: horizontal ripples, if you like, and downward reflections. We'll get to the downward reflections a little bit later on in the picture. All right. I want to continue this across, folks. Now on the other side of the painting, it's exactly the same, and I'm right-handed, so I find it easier to do the opposite side, to turn this thing that way, and I'll work in from the opposite way. Let me show you what I mean. But it's a case of what's comfortable. I mean, it's often easier to be working on a table. Easels are okay, but it's more for demo, to be honest. Let me know in the comments if anybody is actually working on an easel like me. So again, horizontal lines. I'm sort of lifting the brush off and putting it back down is what I'm doing here. I'm working across. And I can keep revisiting. It's a quick flick. If you do, as someone mentioned, put the tongue out and work slowly like this, it doesn't work. It needs to be a quick movement, and we're not rushing on this one, so take your time, have a bit of a practice at it, folks. And basically match the height of the trees. That's what it's all about, yeah? Keep getting more colour, wipe off the excess, and use the tip of the brush to do horizontal, and just keep building these lines up and up and up, horizontal. that being the secret. And I'm not reflecting the tall pine trees, I'm just reflecting the mass. Now if you've just joined us on the live stream, we are painting an Australian sunset. Horizontal lines. Now as I get towards the centre, let's turn it back so it's the English sunset. And let's take a look at these lines on screen. Now if you look at those, you can see how I've almost got nothing here, but there it comes in. And I would encourage you to keep adding a few extra darker and darker ones as you go through. Again, a couple of taps, keep adding more and more horizontal quick flicks, build it up. Almost nothing on the brush here, folks, yeah? And that of course is the same over here as well. The trick is, as you get towards the centre, just to have almost nothing happening there. Just that very weak effect of the odd little tree. Can't go wrong. As far as rewinding the live stream, I believe that you just watch it live, but after the event you can certainly go back and you can watch this again and again and again. Excuse me. So there's no problem there, okay? Please remember this is the first time we've done a live workshop. In fact, he's probably one of the first people to do it in the country, and you know, it's a learning curve for us all. So if you keep watching on future ones, I'm sure there'll be ways to do that. You will be sent a link on email so you can access the video at home, okay? We shall have a bit of a recap in a second on this and let people catch up. So I don't think you can rewind on Twitch, okay? Now, another question that's come through is it better to work on an easel? Well, my advice is no. I don't teach anybody with easels. I use an easel myself for demo and education, but if I was sat in my studio painting, I do use a desk basically, and I use the desk to paint on. Simple as that, really. And that to me is by far the best way of working. I do often stand up for doing things like this, but easels are mainly for demo, okay? So just a quick recap on what we've done so far. We spoke about practicing these horizontal lines, you know, and taking your time at doing these horizontal brush strokes, and keep building these lines up and up. Don't just put 3 or 4 and then go for a coffee, think you've done. Keep going at it, keep working at these lines, because these are important. Because it starts to make a composition. It starts to pull this area coming around the side here, and for me it makes a big difference putting these on. And of course those tall those tall pine trees are something that you can always put quite a bit of time into, now or later. Everything we've done on this picture so far has been about spending time fiddling. I mean, those clouds, how many people on this workshop here have been to my lessons and workshops, and we've had to race through and do the sky and the clouds in one go? Well, this is the first time I've taught a group in 20 odd years of teaching people that technique, and it's a nice technique that people can put into their own pictures, and it's quite a realistic technique. I mean, these highlights in these clouds are gorgeous. I'm loving them. I think it really adds something to it, okay? So just take your time and keep working on those lines. Let me get closer in here, because I do want to make it where you've got a big mass of trees, hillside, whatever, that needs to have a definite reflection of a solid mass of colour just here. So my colour is dried up. I mean, it's very warm in the studio because we've got these big studio lights shining down against the page here. If you could see around me, there's 3 video cameras and 3 big spotlights shining against the page in the studio here. So it's drying pretty quick and the paint's drying up as well. But watercolour doesn't really go off, it just kind of bakes, and you can put a bit of water with it to reactivate it. So just a damp brush and a bit more blue. I'm making the colour quite strong again, and pretty much the rest of the picture is going to be done with 50 Shades of Grey all the way through. We've got about an hour or so painting time on this one. Okay, so we've got the blue there. I'm going to take a bit of red. We shall be asking some questions at the end, folks, so if anybody wants any questions, start thinking and pop them in the chat, and we'll ask some advice at the end. Okay, if you've got any questions that you want to answer, like what's brown and sticky, things like that. A stick, apparently. Bit of yellow. So that's all 3 colours again. Now again, if you've got a tube of natural grey, you just use it, okay? But I've not got any natural grey here. I'm using the primary colours. That's my colour, that's my dark colour. It looks quite blue on the screen. I can make it more grey by putting more yellow with it, basically. And just a tiny bit of water to help the paint to flow, but nice and strong with the colour. So get yourself mixed up now, folks. A good chunk of grey paint from the 3 colours. Think of it like this. It's roughly 70% blue. So you put the blue in first. Big chunk of blue. This one here is Matthew Palmer's Natural Blue, which is a nice clean non-granulating blue. You pop a little dot of the red, I say about 10%. So that means we can then pop in about 20% yellow, and of course it's the light yellow is what we're using here, okay? So get yourself some colour mixed. I'll let people catch up on that one because we're going to do some nice big dark areas. And while you do that, I'll get myself an M&M. An M&M. An M&M. Can't go wrong, can you? Well, so far for next week's workshop, the one at the Bluebell Woodland, the nice kind of springtime scene we're going to do. Lots of you are booking that, which is wonderful. I've popped the link of where to go to book it in the description, which is just coming up now on the chat. There it is. So if you want to get yourself in for the Bluebell, we are putting a cap on 130 people because I don't want to slow down the live stream. Okay, that's the cap for people, and there was 132 booked on this one. So okay, so this colour, this dark colour, blue, red, yellow, 3 primary colours. It's what we call the key colour. It's the shadow colour. I'm going to take this again, just a tiny dab on the tissue there, because I just want to build up a little bit of extra darkness along the edge. Now, if I get right close into this, it's the same effect. It's the dry brush that I'm interested in, okay? So little horizontal lines. But I just want to make sure that things are really quite dark in the form of horizontals, just where you'd expect it to be a little bit heavier, right on the edge of the paper. And over this side, just the same. Nice horizontal lines, working across. So you get that gorgeous reflection. It just helps to give denseness. And if you follow this across, if you find it's getting a bit light in places, just pop a few extra horizontal lines across here and there. Like here, for example, to me that's really missing some reflection, so I'm just going to pop in a few horizontal lines. Beautiful. Take your time with that, folks. I will let you catch up on that. I'm just going to zoom back a little bit so you can see what I've done there. It's basically, if you look back at your picture, and half close your eyes, squint at your picture, you can see the areas that need that little bit of extra darkness, because it's matching. If you squint at it, if you half close your eyes, you can kind of see the areas that need that reflection. Okay, and that's a great way of seeing the contrast of it. How are we doing, folks? Are we enjoying this? Is it escapism? For a few hours, have you forgot about, you know, that stuff, that thing? Now, that then leaves us an area of water where we're not quite seeing the reflection of the tall trees yet, and I've got, you know, a good dozen or so tall trees, and I want to see the reflection of those with this same colour. But I want to do these as a downward reflection, and the people that have been to my workshops know about the sort of dry brush effect. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is we are going to use the grey. We're going to practice again. What I'm going to do as before, pick up the colour, have a practice, wipe off the majority of the paint, pinch your bristle. Let's get close into this. Let's get the focus on the brush. Can we see how I'm sort of splaying the hairs? So there's not a huge amount of colour on, but you've got that gorgeous dry brush. Try and get your brush to go all spiky, and then what you can do basically is you hold your brush quite loosely and you do these downward lines. Very fine, aren't they then? Let's get close in again so we can see them. Very fine lines. These want to be vertical, completely vertical. And the thing to say here is that people often get themselves all prepped for doing this and they end up doing something like that, and of course it's ruined your picture. So it's very dry brushing. Now please practice this. I call these skid marks, if you know what I mean. So let's take away. So a question come there saying, "Oops, pressed wrong button, being asked to send a link to a friend." The link only works for the named people with the email addresses, so just be a little bit cautious about that one. Alright, and the link to review the video will only work for the people that have booked on as well. Let's just zoom in nice and close here. And let me show you this in action. Now, these want to be downward lines from the tall trees. Now, the problem I get when I'm doing these is that I'm stood to one side painting here, and often if I'm stood here, which is not a natural place to sit and paint, is that I end up with them leaning over this side. So I want to think about rotating the board for doing these, but I'll show you what I mean by that, and then you can have a bit of a practice yourself. So nice and close in. So pick the paint up, tap off the excess, go all nice and spiky like this. It's a nice spiky brush, and then I'm using the spikes to come down where those tall trees are. Can you see that reflection instantly? Spiky. It's the kind of effect that some people can just do instantly. Some people have a bit of a struggle, so it's a nice way of capturing the nice reflection effect. And what a difference that makes, especially to those tall treed areas. This is where I'm focusing the efforts on. If I zoom back at that, and if you compare the two sides, can you see how this side looks way more like a reflection? Beautiful, yeah? Same over this side. Now, that's a bit far over for me, so I'll end up with a lean. So what I want to do here is turn my board this way. I'll show you the different ways. But if you stood up for doing this, you might find it a little bit easier for you. However works for you. If you practice on scrap paper, it's always a good idea. Spiky brush coming down. There's almost nothing on the brush. So I'm picking the paint up, doing that and splaying the hairs. And you can see how much it's working when you turn it back the right way. When I call these skid marks, I'm calling them skid marks in relation to a car tyre on a road, not anything else. So turn that the right way and bring it back into view. Can we see how it gives a beautiful reflection instantly? Yeah? I love that effect. It's such a simple idea, but it works great. Works brilliant. Thanks, Sue, for sending the link to your pal. Get everybody involved in these live streams, folks, because this is keeping the nation busy. This is total escapism, this painting. So thanks for that, Sue. Let's keep the artistic juices flowing, shall we? Now, if you've got any of these in the centre, you can bring these straight down as well. But there's almost nothing on the brush, and you can squint at your picture. You can look back and say, well, that tree is a bit taller there, so I can pop in a bit extra. On an evening, you often see long reflections happening. I love that. It just turns it into water, just instantly makes the thing look like water. I love it. Let's look at the whole picture, folks. You take your time putting those on because they're quite important things to do. Yeah, we are keeping the numbers quite limited on the workshop because I don't want to overload things, you know. So it's always good to get in nice and early. And I can see that lots of you are booking on already, which is wonderful. Lovely, folks. I'm really pleased this is coming together. So just to mention what I want to do with the picture a little bit later on towards the end of it. We're going to put a few more ripples in the foreground. We're going to put a boat on as well, and I did mention having a plastic card, which is an easy way of putting a mast on a boat. I'll show you that. So I've just got myself a plastic card here of some kind, so if you've not got one, you've got time to go and grab something. Also a craft knife as well. If you've got a craft knife handy, would be quite useful. I guess for a lot of you this is the first time you've done some painting over the past couple of weeks, because obviously everything, I normally teach weekly lessons, I do workshops. I've had to cancel and postpone four big workshops, and of course painting holidays are coming up very soon as well. So some painting holidays I'm hoping will happen, but we'll obviously see what is happening. All right, we'll keep you posted, but all being well, everything will, if you have to cancel anything, it'll get moved to a later date. Okay, so please don't worry about anything like that. Someone's emailed me about it. But live workshops will be happening on a constant, regular basis, I promise you. Okay, so keep booking them, keep coming along, folks, and just enjoy doing a bit of watercolour, because it's something what you can just escape from the world by doing this. It's a good, relaxing thing to do. I'm finding it relaxing, apart from this morning when things didn't quite work so well with the old YouTube. So yeah, as far as I'm aware, the painting holidays are going to happen. I've not cancelled any painting holidays just yet, but we shall see what happens. Okay. Also, please check out the website watercolour.tv for the membership fee of $49.99 for a year. There's over 400 hours of me painting, and also adding new stuff weekly. 2 new paintings a week. The bird on the tap went on recently. The lighthouse is going on very soon. We've got the stag. This stag's on there. There he is. Here's the stag. He's on there. And the video of how to do him. The alpine scene at the back. You've got the lighthouse here. The galleon. Look at this. Look at this. Is something a bit different. This little fence post here. Look, it's a bit of an unusual one. And I think Leslie's watching from South Wales, and that's a picture you'll recognise, Leslie. So I'll say hello to people watching in Wales. So have a look at the website. Right, okay. So hopefully that's been quite a relaxed process. And again, if we look at the finished picture, we can see it looks like a nice painting. At this stage, we've got a nice picture. Okay, if that's what we was to walk away with, we'd be happy. I think it looks nice. It looks gorgeous sky, and it looked nice in a frame and everything. You know, so a pretty straightforward picture. But I want to take it a bit further. I want to put some extra ripples into it, and also I want to be adding a boat and show you how simple, no sketching, you can paint a little boat on your picture. It is optional, and you could always practice it first before you apply it, and then you can of course decide. So let's have a look at the bottom of the picture now. So far, how are you getting on with your skid marks? Let me know in the comments, folks, in the chat. Has anybody got successful skid marks? For this next piece, we're going to be working much lighter in colour. The dark colour, we shall revisit the dark colour a little bit later for putting the boat in, but at this stage I'm going to be using a lighter colour. I've got the tissue here, and I want to clean my brush, and the first thing I want to do is put a few horizontal lines where the sun would be reflecting in the water. Okay, so I'm just going to use the 6 brush, nice and clean, give it a couple of taps, and using the tip of it straight below, and I want to wash off a little bit of colour. Now you might not get much colour coming out here, it depends how much colour you've got there to start with, but you scrub it. If you've got a square brush or a lift out brush, then you could use that, but I'm just using the 6 brush. Can you see it takes that out? Notice the perspective of that is getting a little bit wider as I'm moving lower down. Okay, but I don't want to go all the way to the bottom. I just want to keep this thing simple. So at the minute I'm using quite a pointy brush, and I'm washing out some little horizontal lines. Now I'm tapping with dry tissue, and it comes off easy because it's yellow. This is why at the beginning, if you're doing this picture again, make sure you put a good thick strong yellow on right at the beginning. Okay, keep cleaning the brush on the tissue and horizontal lines. The lines get wider, but also they get further apart, so wider and further apart, to the point where as you get lower down it doesn't really want all that many. Can you see what I mean by wider? And if I zoom back so you can see the sun, it starts to reflect it. Now that's only the starting point of this, okay? If you want to taper these in a bit more, you can use the point of your brush to put some little horizontal lines at the sides. And then wipe it out. So you can be a bit more precise with it, okay? We shall be putting some more light in the water before we finish as well, but not just yet, not just yet. So you can see that sort of light on the water. So it starts off quite thin, about, I don't know, maybe 2/3 the width of the sun, and it gets wider and more spacious, but not all the way to the bottom. You can see that, can't you? So you can just be a little bit more spaced out if you're not already. So Maggie May said mine are a bit dark. Do you mean your skid marks? Or do you mean your reflection? Because if your reflection's a bit dark, these lines here, what you can do is once it's had a bit of time to dry, after you've finished the picture, one way of calming down areas is, as daft as it seems, is to use a bit of sandpaper. I'm not going to use any sandpaper on this picture, we don't need to, but it's a way of calming down colour. And I'll show you what sandpaper can do. I mean, if you've got some hanging around in the shed somewhere, basically if I put some sandpaper on here, it's just a normal fine grain, you can do that. Can you see it takes off the surface and it sort of weakens it? So you could sort of sand over your skid marks and it'll calm them down. You can also, if you're still a bit concerned that your skid marks are a bit dark, you can go in like we've just done with the sun, and you can wash off some horizontal lines that go over the top of them. Okay, I don't do it on here because it's fine as it is, but that's how I would calm them down. So little horizontal lines like this over the top of the lines. We shall be using this a bit later to put some light in them as well, so don't worry. Okay. So if you have a look at doing the light on the water, horizontal lines. Again, someone is going to win this picture, don't forget that. So if you're booked in for the next one, we shall be giving this away with a couple of DVDs, and I will pick that at random from everyone that's booked in that attended this picture today. So I just had a message from somebody saying that the screen's locked. Well, if you refresh the browser or go back to the email and click the link again, it'll bring it back. It's probably just your laptop's just, the web browser's just froze them up, and that should refresh the screen for you. Okay. From time to time, if you're sort of watching a video for, 4 hours straight, obviously we all know computers crash from time to time, so things happen, but as long as you've got that link, you can access. So I just got a message from Keith saying he's concerned about the Lake District in June. Well, at the minute nothing's being cancelled. If we do have to cancel, we will just move everybody over to next year, so don't worry about that at this stage. Remember, this picture in front of us here is escapism. Let's focus on this and just enjoy. So yeah, but we'll be in touch if we do have to cancel anything. Okay, you'll be fine. Right, now that leaves us with this big chunk of water at the bottom and around here where it's a little bit flat. We need to put some movement into that water, some ripples. I'll not say movement in water too much because it might make you run to the lavvy, as it were. But I'm going to zoom in a bit closer here. And I'm doing a similar thing to what I did here, but I'm doing it in a way where I'm working with a much lighter colour. Same brush, just lighter. That's my dark colour. You can see it's dried up. I'm just going to dilute it massively as well, so it's really going for water. You can see how that colour's getting all nice and flowy here. Really pale, folks. I'm going to pick the paint up and I want to do a similar thing to what I did before. So I'll wipe it on the side first a couple of times, I get the tissue and give it a bit of a dab or two, and again I want to put some ripples, lighter ripples, but across the foreground. Very weak, folks. Please, before you do anything here, make sure you get your colour very pale. Can you see these lines? These are much weaker. Let's zoom in a bit closer, because these are very pale. They need to be, okay? So the colour's much lighter than the one I was using before. It's the same one, just diluted. Wipe off the excess on the side. And to be fair, let me say this to you. Don't bother with a tissue here. Just wipe off the excess on the side. That'll be enough. Practice first if you want to, but basically start from the masking tape at the bottom and work your way up and try and let it disappear up. Can you see how it fades? It's very pale, but it wants to be. It doesn't want to be strong, this colour. Let me show you on the scrap paper as well. Pop that just on there. So imagine that's the bottom of the painting there. Okay, so that's the bottom of the picture. So paint up on the side, very weak in colour, so make sure you're happy that you've got that pale. Horizontal lines, hovering again, and then touching the paper across the base. As you work up, you can let them just sort of get wider. Can you see the width? And then you move across and you do a little bit more. So practice on a piece of paper. I mean, even copy of paper. It doesn't have to be watercolour paper that you practice on. But it's this. Again, if anyone likes to work very slowly, it doesn't have the same effect, does it? Not for this. It does help, as somebody mentioned, if you pop your tongue out and you can keep revisiting the bottom of the picture and adding a few more of these lines as you move across. And I'll basically, if you compare the two sides, you can see before there's nothing happening in here. It's just that little bit of incidental work, but it kind of stops here. It sort of stops there. It doesn't need to go all the way up at all. Alright, so I'm not using tissue, but I'm wiping off the excess on the side. So all the way across, and even over the top of the sun reflection. That's fine. If anything, it calms that down. So again, over this side, right into the edge of the picture here. Don't be afraid of it. It's a definite technique, is ripples. If the colour's light enough, it's going to work. There we go. So you can see that nice kind of ripple effect over here as well. Look. So I'm going over the same area again and again, but I'm building up the concentration at the front and easing it back, and the whole process is creating depth. So a darker front, weaker back. So basically, just to show you again on this scrap here. So imagine that's the bottom of the picture where my hand is, roughly. It's basically going across horizontally. Make the lines get further apart as it runs out of colour. Reload your brush, wipe it on the side of your palette, move to the next piece. Start over the top of the masking tape as well. Move up, forward, back. And if you do that across, but notice how it's gone from a solid, sort of heavy colour almost to nothing as it gets to the top. And that's really the secret to this. Ripples and movement and all that stuff. And it's the sort of job that you can think, well, look back, lean back at the picture, have a look at it from a bit of a distance, squint at it, and think to yourself, you know something, I want to pop a little bit extra at the bottom here, and half close your eyes is a way of seeing the contrast. And does it gradually fade off towards the back for the water? See, I've got a big chunk just here, look, on the right side, and when that's had a second to dry, I'll pop in a few extra little bits and bobs. And don't worry about going over the top of the reflection of the sun. It's all part of it. The big secret is to be pale with your colour. And again, even at this stage, if you was to finish your painting here, you've got a picture. It works as a painting. It looks nice, you know. It's a, you've got a scene there, you've got a scene here, and so on. Or you could, even if you just look at it like this, you've got a picture. But we're going to put a boat on soon on this picture, and some extra bits of detail. But I just want people to spend a little bit of time adding those horizontal lines to the picture, because that's what makes water work, especially in the foreground. Any painting that I've ever done that features water, you will see horizontal lines and downward skid marks, and I will show you some examples shortly. Of course, the boat is optional, and you can, I'm going to show you how simple it is to paint a boat on a sunset picture, and how much of a difference it can actually make to it as well. If you look at this painting here, this alpine picture, now I know that some of you will recognise this because you painted it at a workshop. This is a video on Watercolour TV, so if you become a member of Watercolour TV, you can see here that the that it's a step-by-step picture, but can you see the water is almost done the same as what we've just done? The dark reflection here, the pale grey at the bottom, and see the skid marks. One thing different here is we've got these light bits, which we've not got to yet, but we shall get there. So if you like that kind of thing, folks, it's not just about painting summary pictures, obviously. It's about painting a bit of everything. Is that going to stay up there? Or is it going to come crashing down? There we go. So anytime you see me paint water, you'll see it's horizontal unless it's a waterfall or a crashing wave. Okay, so this picture here, the waterfall is horizontal apart from where it goes over the edge, and of course we change direction. This bluebell wood is in my book Watercolour for the Absolute Beginner, which you can pick up from the website. Of course you can. Talking about painting holidays a few minutes ago, well, this was a painting that we did last year. How things have changed in a year, eh? This was last May, and I know that some people watching this, they've actually painted this picture, actually sat there. This is a place called Cromford Mill, and we sat there and painted this over a day. Beautiful day, but look at the water. It's just a series of horizontal lines with a couple of skid marks chucked in for good measure. But you can be crafty and you can pop in where you want those horizontal lines to be. For example, those horizontal lines that make that building reflect, I popped a piece of paper there and did the horizontal lines from that edge, and it made that look like it was a shadow, and same here. So that's how you can build these things up. So Keith has mentioned in the chat about using a razor or a knife to do the sun. How do you keep the scraped area smooth? Well, it doesn't go smooth. I mean, at the minute all we've done is use the number 6 brush to make it look as though it's reflecting. So that was washing out rather than scraping. We shall get to scraping in a couple of minutes once people have had chance to do this little bit. So we've not scraped yet, but it is a rough textured surface. If you look at this picture of the stag, and again there is a video on Watercolour TV of how to do him, that step by step. The craft knife was used here, but I can feel it. I can feel the texture of the knife. It's part of it, but we've not done that just yet. Okay, same as a picture like the lighthouse one at the back here. If we get close into him, you can see that these splashes and these horizontal lines, a lot of them are done with a knife. Right, it's the last thing you do, like right at the end. Okay, so there will be a video on how to paint that coming very soon on the website watercolour.tv. So it's a good time to get yourself booked in. Alright. Okay, let's get back to this one then, folks, because I want to have a look. If anyone got this problem that I got here, which was a big block of grey, which I'm not all that keen on, it's a little bit too chunky. So what I want to do is I've got a couple of options. One of them, of course, is to use the 6 brush and to wash off some of the colour. Can you see it calms it down and it puts light in between? And of course another option is to come back to the grey, the pale grey on the tissue, and just work over the top and add more individual ripples, because I'm quite keen on making sure that the foreground all the way across is the darkest part of these lines, and keep working across with the same colour, because it lifts it up, especially in the corners. I always find in the corners, if you make it nice and dark, it creates something called a vinaigrette, or should I say a vignette, that someone's put in the comments actually. When can we paint a vinaigrette? There's a couple of phrases that I sort of say as a joke, and one of them is vignettes. Now vignettes are like the fence post that we said. So that's a vignette, faded edges, and a few people in the past have mistakenly called them vinaigrettes. And the other one is white paint. If anyone's into using white paint, of course gouache or gouache, if you're posh, is white, and you know, sometimes people call it goulash without realising. But yeah, a few horizontal lines here and there in the foreground, especially in the foreground and slightly up into the corners. It just helps to frame the picture a little bit. One final thing to mention while we're doing this, folks, I'm just going to zoom in nice and close into the trees again here, and I want to show you this as an option. You don't have to do this, but maybe on the odd tree, a couple of trees, if you've got a big chunk of colour like here below them, what you could do is use the 6 brush, or even coming back to the rigger brush, the pointy one, or the branch brush or whatever, clean it and wipe it almost dry, and actually use it to paint in a few lines, and then dab with tissue. Can you see? It'll start to take a little bit of colour out. The more you do it, the more you'll see it start to take a little bit of paint out, almost there's a little bit of interest going off inside. Can you see what I mean? So basically, I'm, although the sun's catching one side of those trees, do another one here, but I would say use something a bit finer if you are doing this. So then you tap it with tissue in it, and it just puts a little bit of light in the trees. It's optional, but it's there. Trying to work it into the shape of them, of course. Does that make sense to you? Just in, we've got a big block of colour, and it just makes them stand out, don't it? Again, it's non-destructive, this. So if you do this and you think, well, that's not quite working too well, when it's dry, just put some of the dark back on it. And I'll show you the same on the opposite side as well. So lifting out has been a technique that we've been using in this picture quite a bit, and it's a technique that's not widely used by many artists. I'll say that to you now, folks, because it's a technique. I'm very much a self-taught painter. I started painting at a really young age, when I was about 9 or 10, so that's about 7 years, eh? And people have been, I've been teaching this medium for years, and lift out is a technique that's not widely used by other artists, but for me, I use it a lot, and it makes such a difference. That little bit of a highlight just here just puts layers into those trees. It doesn't want much, if any at all, and again, it's optional, okay? So don't worry too much about putting any in, but it tells your mind that that tree is a bit closer than that tree, and it just puts layers into it. Hopefully that makes sense, and it is something that I would encourage you to do. Alright, so if I was to pan across, I've done literally two trees on the right, and if you come over to the left, you can see I've popped in a couple just over there as well. Little highlights. It all makes sense, don't it? Can't go wrong, can you, eh? I'm just replying to somebody's email. Somebody was watching and the video was frozen, and that'll be because I guess the browser or the computer just crashed. You know, if that happens, just refresh the browser, close it down, go back to the email and reload the link. But remember, in a couple of hours time I will be sending you another link so you can actually view the entire video back in full at a later stage. Someone has also emailed me saying that they've got skid marks all the way down the page. Okay, just to mention about that one then, again, you could use the horizontal lines, lift out like you did with your sun, lift out some little lines over the top, or again, a bit of sandpaper is a great way of calming it down afterwards. All right. And Margaret at Crane has put she can't find where to book the next online class. Again, I'll pop you the link in the messages on the chat, or I will email you direct if you can't find it. But basically on watercolour.tv there is a workshop tab. I can show you here actually. So basically if you go on the website, click workshops, and then you can see that's the next one, which is the blue bell. You click it and then you can simply get the information from there. Okay. Okie dokie. We're almost ready for the boat. You can smell the excitement, can't you? Hey, I'll put the boat in very soon, folks. But again, at this point, we've almost got a finished picture. I'm going to paint a boat in. A small one, out here somewhere. I'm going to put the mast on, so I'm going to be using a plastic card as well. Let me paint it first, and what I suggest to you is that you paint it along with me, but not necessarily on here. Get yourself now a couple of minutes, go and get yourself a piece of paper, folks, a scrap sheet of paper or something, even just a bit of copy paper, and I'll show you how we can use the number 6 brush to paint a boat on the picture. Go and grab yourself some paper. Give it a bit of note paper will do, it doesn't really matter what it is. I'll zoom in a bit closer for this as well. The colour that we're going to use for this is going to be the dark grey mix, and it wants to be as dark as the trees. Okay, so if you need to make your colour a bit darker, then please do so. And again, it's optional, so if you want to watch it first, please feel free to do that, alright? If you want to paint along with me, you can do it on a scrap piece of paper. I'm just going to get myself some more colour while you do that. So I'm going to get some more of the yellow and the blue. But this is pretty much the last bit of painting we're going to do on the picture, folks, okay? And treat it as its own little demo, really. And we are going to use the knife at the end to put some sparkle in the painting as well. Right, so I'm just going to mix some more colour basically. Size 6 brush though, nice and strong. So I put a bit of water in there. Nice thick chunky blob of blue. You can see how juicy that colour is currently. Juicy colour. There's the grey. Nice and heavy. Don't be afraid. Make sure it's got a nice bit of movement to it. The blue. Gorgeous blue, that natural blue. A little bit of red. Watch out for the red. It's easy to put too much in. I bet how many people have put too much red in? And then the yellow. Yeah, so a comment just come from Casbar62 saying what a difference putting the highlights in the trees has made. I agree. That is a lovely thing to see, that it really is. Lift out is not a technique that you'll see. I go to art groups and do talks and demos, and I do them and I lift out and I'm like, well, I've never seen that before, you know, and it's such a nice technique to do, it really is. So I've got a good strong bit of colour here. Now what you could do is you could play this colour a little bit crafty, folks. Okay, once you've got your sort of grey tinge from the yellow, the red and the blue, pop a little bit, a touch more red, so you get a slight plum tinge. Can you see the plum tinge? So it's the normal colour we've just been using, but it's got a touch more red and then a wee bit more yellow. So it goes a little bit more towards the brown. I mean, this is a great thing about mixing colours, is that you can play around with the consistency and the tone, the hue of the colour. So adding a bit more yellow and even a bit more red has made that colour a bit warmer. It's a warmer colour. Can we see that? It's not as grey as it was before, and the more yellow and the more red you put in, it starts to become brown if you go too far. So we'll call that one a warm grey compared to where we had more blue. So there's a bit less blue in this one. So have a go at mixing the colour, and then I'll show you in a second how to paint in the boat. All right. It's going to be like a little rowing boat with a mast on. It's only going to be tiny. It's not going to be a big thing. But you might want to do this on a scrap piece of paper. You can always decide if you want to put it on later, can't you? It's not essential. So we have the colour here. Making sure it's got that bit of warmth in it, so that bit of yellow, bit of red. I can sort of see it's looking a little bit greeny brown kind of colour. Can we see that? Number 6 brush. Now again, that's a lot of colour I've mixed there, so I'm going to rotate my brush and draw it over the edge. Now I'm happy to use this number 6 brush for this, okay? I'm more than happy to stick with this brush, but if you feel that you want to use something finer, please do think about using a rigger or something smaller. But I want to use the number 6 for the minute, and I'm happy. But I know that my number 6 is quite pointy, okay? We do actually sell these nice sets, and we are shipping these out still at the minute. I'll show you these. We've got a few of these left actually, and this is a set of brushes, a Matthew Palmer Gold brush set. And there's actually 5 brushes in a case here, and it's got the size 20 in, it's got the size 10, it's got a 6, which is what I've got here. It's got a rigger and a square brush. It's everything you need to do these paint along at home pictures, and you're basically getting a size 20 brush, which in its own right will cost you almost £30, and that is included in the set, and the set is 39 quid, so it's quite reasonable. Again, you can check that out on the website. Right, so the first part of the boat, folks, is to decide on your position. I'd say a little bit higher than halfway, just to the left of the sun as well, so about here somewhere. And my first thing to do is to paint a figure of 8. So I'll paint a figure of 8 on the side, or an infinity sign. That's my first job. Again, if you want to do this on a scrap piece of paper before, not a bad idea. Then we'll decide which is the inside and which is the outside of the boat. I'm doing like a rowing boat, or like a dinghy or dingy or whatever you call it. And then I'm going to pop in this piece so it's nice and dark So that's my inside of the boat, okay? Good strong bit of colour, can't go wrong. Well done, Anne, for getting the brushes. Everything's shipped. It's just taking a bit longer at the minute because of all the chaos out there, but yeah, it's a good offer, those brushes, I must admit, they really are. Okay, so that's the first stage. Again, remember you can watch this back at any time and enjoy it at a later stage. Then what we'll do is we'll paint in the hull. Okay, now I'm going to get a bit closer in now I've got the size. You can see how big it is in relation to the trees, can't you, actually? But I want to be close in for you so you can see this thing happen. So that's the front or the bow, is that right? The bow, the front, stern at the back. That comes down on a slight angle, so it's leaning towards me, and then at the back or the stern, it goes the opposite way. So two lines. Then I kind of fill it in across the bottom. Now it can be a little bit wavy, not too much, but a little bit wavy. So basically, it's like a bowl shape. This will grow on you, trust me, I'm an artist. Yeah, so a comment has just come about brushes losing the point. Absolutely, 100,000 million percent. I get through about 15 to 20 brushes, size 6 brushes a year, but that's because I'm painting constantly. If your size 6 brush is looking more like this, it's probably getting ready to be replaced, which is why I'm mentioning that you might want to bring in some of the pointy brushes or a rigger brush for doing the boat, okay? Or something smaller. But yeah, certainly wear out, because most brushes, when you're digging around in the little wells of colour, you know it's going to wear out, isn't it? So we've painted this sort of bowl shape. Then what we'll do is we'll pop a shadow in. So at the front here, because the boat curves, don't it? Sort of curves outwards. So I want to paint in from the tip of the bow a curved line, which is like a triangular shape. Can we see that? Yeah. And then that goes across and slightly up at the back. So it's like a bit of a mirror, but it's deeper here. So if we get to that stage, again, if you want to practice this first, and then you could always spend a bit of time doing this on your own picture. The line at the bottom is pretty much horizontal, so it's sat silhouetting against the sky. How are we doing? Looks a bit weird at the minute, but it'll grow on you. Then what you do is you take advantage of the fact that watercolour paint never really permanently dries. Okay, so we can come back into this and we can soften and we can blend this thing in. All right. So I've got my tissue. I could come back to this in a couple of days and still do this next stage, okay? And that's quite important to mention. So I'll clean my brush really well, and then I'll give it a good 3 or 4 wipes over the tissue. So I've got my 6 brush quite damp, or whichever brush I'm using. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to scrub, I'm going to fetch that colour. This line here, washing it completely away. Can you see I'm taking it out? Like when we put the light in the clouds in the mountains. So I'm going right to the edge and I'm spreading the colour, dragging it into the hull from the bow at the front and the stern at the back. And I'm smoothing it. Can you see I'm fetching the colour? Take your time with this, folks, and just have a practice at it. Now if you notice, I've left that little bit there for the minute, because what's important at this stage is that I'm really smoothing the colour across, so it's fading towards the top, the edge. Now that little bit I've left, I want to soften it, but as I'm blending this colour, I'm lifting up paint. So my brush has got paint on it, can you see? So I want to clean it again, wipe it 3, 4, 5 times so it's just damp, and then just finish off by just moving that colour so it's smooth, but you've got that nice softness. Does that all make sense to you? There we go. So you can see it's nice and soft, and it looks like a bit of a bowl shape at this point, I always think. Get yourself to that stage, folks. If you can see any hard lines, go back in and put a bit of a softener into it with an almost dry brush. Use the tip of a brush, either the 6 or something finer. If anyone's using the branching detail brushes, probably the larger one's the better one, or a rigger brush or something similar. We're almost there, folks, with this one. Marvellous. How are we doing? So if you look back at the picture, the boat, and if you think, well, I can still see a bit of a hard line here, I'm just going to soften it in a little bit. It's worth picking up the grey again to make sure it's nice and dark at that bottom piece just here, look. I'm just revisiting mine to make sure it's a little bit dark in there, that bottom corner. Okay. I could always clean my brush again, wipe it almost dry, and smooth it over. But as long as it's nice and dark at this bottom here, right in this corner, it'll sit nice when we're finished in your water. And of course we can't judge it until we finish it. Now, just below the boat, I want to pick up the colour. I'm just going to come back a little click. Again, don't forget, folks, if you had any issues, if you missed any bits during the workshop, if you've had any problems with it crashing on you or something like that, this will be online for you and you only to access very, very soon. Okay. Picking up the colour, wiping off the excess, so it's a almost dry brush. You remember putting the darkness in here? Well, let's do a similar thing with the boat. Let's put some horizontal lines across, but remember the dryness. So almost nothing on the brush here. Think about how this would reflect. Think about how it would be like a mirrored reflection, as in it goes on an angle. Does that make sense? So it's like a little bit of a horizontal line again. So it's back to what we did earlier, but you can see it kind of mirrors. It gets wider, and of course it's taller here than it is there, so you'd reflect that in the water. As long as you do the colour dry again with the brush, then you can revisit this. And from time to time it's worth putting little tiny bits on, like a little bit at the back, just a little spot just there, and a bit on the bow, straight up. Can you see that little bit there? And just little dots every so often. And with it being a rowing boat, you need to put your rollock on it, which would be where you put your oar in, yeah? So it's little tiny bits of dots around. I always think looks quite nice in a picture like this on these boats, little tiny dots and spots. Again, I'm using the 6. You might want to use something a bit smaller for this. So, like I say, if anyone has experienced a problem where they've not managed to get all the way through to the end, various bits, then you will be sent a link very soon where you can access the full video, start to finish, nothing cut out, and enjoy the whole process. And I've worked, I promise you, I've worked really hard over the past 10 days getting this thing put into place, testing out brand new equipment and all the different ways, and for whatever reason this morning YouTube wasn't liking. If we was broadcasting this on YouTube, you would be able to rewind the video. You can drag it back, but then it takes a lot of buffering for you to catch up. Twitch is a smooth, streamless process. It's the most user-friendly as well. So I hope the quality, as much as it can be, is okay. It all depends on the quality of your home internet, of course, but remember, you can access this as much as you like. So just making sure we've got that nice reflection, like so. It's also, if I zoom in really quite close to this, it's also worth, I mean, I'm probably going to change over for something a bit more fine at this point. So I've got this pointy brush here, rigger brush or something. It's worth picking some of that colour up. There it is. Same colour, of course. You can see that sort of murky brown colour. I am going to put a bit more blue into that colour now, so it makes it a little bit richer. You can see it's a little bit deeper colour. So I've added just a little tiny bit of blue and a touch more yellow in this, so it's more of a bluey grey. So you can always put a bit more blue and a bit more, but make it more similar colour to what we used at the background trees. And the reason for this is because I want to use this brush and I want to pop in some lines that follow. Can you see I'm using it like a pen? So this is a rigger brush or something with a nice point on it. This one's a branch brush. Can you see I've put the lines in? There you go. From the back as well, look. The sort of planks of wood, yeah, kind of thing. Does that make sense? And of course at the same time you can tidy up any edges that you feel that you want to make a little bit crisper. Can make these lines look a bit more precise. Things like that. So that's using a finer brush basically. More like a rigger brush or something. And of course the boat's a bit lonely, so I want to use this same brush to pop in a bit of rope coming down into the water, and then of course reflect it. Made up a little horizontal wiggly lines, so it looks like a reflection, and a few dangly bits coming off it. So a nice bit of a reflection. Just helps it to sit there, so it's not just lost in the middle of you, drifted away as it were. Yeah, so it's nice to get all the nice comments about Twitch. Twitch was always the backup plan for me, to be fair, because I know that Twitch works, but everything was working smooth as cream on YouTube. I was sat up till about 2:30 last night, and I've been working so hard to get all this in place for everybody, and I've done 5 tests over this past week, and it was all working great. And this morning YouTube actually got in touch with me and said it's a problem we can't fix, and that's what happened. So the technical issues this morning, not anything that I could control, but I think we worked well to get to this stage, folks. So thanks for waiting. Thanks for waiting. Okay, so if I zoom back a little bit, you can see that rope there again. I hope you... I'm trying to take this nice and slow for you, folks. I don't want to rush through this one, okay? Am I going at the right pace on the boat? Do you want me to work quicker or slower? Let me know in the chat. But if we come back a bit, we can see what we've got so far. We've got a little lost boat, but I want to put the mast on it very shortly. And again, it's always something I'd recommend you practice before you jump in. And I'll show you how to do the mast. I'm going to use a plastic card, and I'm going to put some paint down the edge of the plastic card. Yeah, thanks for the comment there from Arch1E99. Yes, I got a announcement through my email account that YouTube was basically overwhelmed with something that was happening in the country, and it was just on complete lockdown, and that's why things were a little bit awkward this morning, because of that reason. So nothing we were doing, everything we're doing is fine here, but you know, and on the whole, you know, it's worked out. Even though it was 90 minutes delayed, I'm sure you've got nothing else to do much, and you wasn't dashing off anyway this morning, was you? So again, thank you for all the lovely, nice comments, and thank you for sticking with me, okay, through this. So, plastic card for putting the mast on. Now, obviously, we've got 2 bits of card, 2 sides here, long and short. I'm going to use the short side of a plastic card. Now, I've got several plastic cards here. It doesn't really matter, just a plastic card would be great. And using this very thick colour, very strong colour, which is the grey, I want to paint it down the short edge, nice and thick, and again, something to practice, down the short edge of a plastic card. Now I want to pop this on, making sure I'm fairly straight with this. I want to pop a couple of these on. So my first one's going to go about there somewhere. I want to press it really firm and let go. Can you see the mast? Works lovely, don't it? Now, that's just off centre. Now, the thing to say about that is you get a bit of bleed, but it looks natural. It looks as though the light's catching. That's why I like this method. My second bit of a mast is the same, but I'm only going to do half the card. You see, I'm just using half the card. Does that make sense? So the paint finishes here. Look, again, something just to take your time with. And then when I just press that half on towards the back, I'll get a smaller mast. There you go. So you often get a couple, don't you, on these things? Practice that, folks, before you jump in the deep end. It's got to be strong colour to make it work. That works nice, don't it, that? Of course, if you've got that nice pointy brush, the branching detail brush, you can use it to go in, and you can sort of tidy up the edges a little bit, or the rigger brush if you're using the rigger brush, so you can tidy up the edges and make it all nice and fine. I always think if you pop a little bit of a extension on the top of the main mast, nice and thin, you always get that little bit extra at the top, and a little bit of a flag, of course, you could pop that in. Little Jolly Roger. Looks quite effective. Now, you often see a little bit of a rolled up sail here, so I'm just going to paint in with the rigger brush for this one a bit of a weird sort of blobby line, so like a bit of a sail that's rolled up. See what I mean by that? You can take that as far as you want really. That's the main sail, of course, all rolled up, ready for the evening. But again, what a difference that makes. And again, if you wanted to do any tidying up around the mast, but these little blobs look nice, they look natural to me, and I think they make sense. So it's just nice being just off centre for that boat, and of course it's complemented really well with the reflection in the water of the sun. Now obviously, if I come back a little bit here, there we go, I would expect to see a reflection in the mast. So I've got this brush a bit like we did here, so I want to make sure I'm in line. I'm going to do a bit of a wiggly line, again something to practice first if you want to, and the smaller one. So that's right on the edge of the painting there, look. But it reflects, you see? It all starts to group together here. Let me show you that close up, folks. It's nice to hear in the comments that there's lots of people that have been to my normal painting workshops over the past 20 years, and people saying it's a similar style of teaching. I'm very conscious that people are watching. I've been teaching art for over 20 years, you know, so I do take my time, and it's also good to know that I'm not the only person that has been having YouTube issues, because some of my friends have been in touch this morning saying that they've had problems with YouTube, and it's been overwhelmed by news events. So Twitch is a service designed for people that want to do this kind of thing. Okay, marvellous. So you can see that nice reflection there, and what a difference that makes to it. Come back a little click. Now, we've pretty much got a boat, folks, but I do want to mention rigging, of course. Make sure you've got that nice little bit of an extension, even a few little dots at the top of the mast. If I zoom in close, it's these little bits of detail that make silhouettes work. So a few little sort of dots at the top is always quite effective. And it's up to you whether you do this or not. But where you went from the thicker bit, where the card did, to the fine piece, I want to pop in a little cross with a fine brush and put some little sort of dots on it, so it gives you that sort of cross mast effect. And we'll put some random bits on. That's a bearded chuff sat on there, can you see? So that little sort of cross is optional with a fine brush, but I think it adds to it. Again, it makes it more of a silhouette. Now I'm sure that most of you know that a rigger brush is called a rigger brush because it was always designed for painting in. Rigging. yeah, so somebody else has commented, Sarpal23, lots of people have been having problems on Facebook and YouTube and online streaming that has not been working very well. It's one of those things, you know, and it's going to happen, isn't it? Especially in such a popular place like Facebook and YouTube, of course. Great. So, rigging on boats. Now, my thoughts on rigging, it doesn't need to go from start to finish. What I mean by that is, if you look at this galleon here, if I bring across the galleon and take a look at this, can we see here the rigging on that galleon doesn't necessarily go, let me show you what I mean, doesn't necessarily go all the way to where it sort of tapers off. Do you see what I mean? It disappears to nothing. This painting, by the way, is on the website Watercolour TV. There's a video how to do it. So it kind of disappears to nothing. So if we're doing rigging, it's again something to practice, you know, and it's really one of the few times that I would recommend using a finer brush, like a branching detail, like a rigger brush, but it's a tapered line, okay? So if you pick the paint up, first of all, okay, and again practice is a good idea, wipe off the majority of the paint from the tip of the brush and have a trial run. I'm going to do this on the side. Let's get the camera back because I find it easier and you can decide on that for yourself. So basically what we're going to do here is I'm going to taper these off, okay? So if I was coming down from here, I'd do a bit of a rehearsal and then I'd just do a quick flick to nothing. Can you see that tapered line to nothing from here, from the tip of the mast? Almost goes to nothing. Do you see what I mean? It just vanishes. Do it from the bow and put a few of those on. From here as well, look. Again, something to practice. It's optional, but I always think it makes such a difference. If I turn this the right way and bring the camera back, it just puts a little bit of interest into the boat, and there you go, you can see that, can't you? So again, it doesn't necessarily have to go anywhere. You sort of rehearse the line before you bring it in. Hopefully that makes sense. There we go. If I zoom back a little bit more, you can see the reflection and the whole thing in front of you. It makes a little scene in its own right, don't it? It's always nice to see that. One thing that you might decide to do is make the main part of the mast a little bit thicker, a little bit wider, and make sure you're happy with the reflection at this point. Lots of horizontal lines. Tapering off. Nice. But that extra bit of height on the top was nice to do as well. My dad was a yachtsman. You know, he had sort of small yachts and things. Very sort of traditional sailor with a flat cap in the pipe, and bless him. And there was always little bits on the mast, like little random things, you know, just popped everywhere. And these sort of things make silhouettes work as a picture. They really do. Yeah, listen, thanks Keith for what you said about a last minute switch. I was trying for 90 minutes to get YouTube to work, and I finally got in touch with them. I'm a pro user of YouTube. I got in touch with them, and they were telling me that they said they're just overwhelmed today. So Twitch came to the rescue, so thank you, Twitch. And yeah, we've pretty much had a steady 115, 120 people watching throughout this, so super. And Diamond Radley, love her, that's a great name, has mentioned the brushes, the branch and detail brushes just make it a bit easier, that's all. It's basically a posh rigger brush, but it's got that super fine tip on it. We're almost at a stage where we can call this picture finished, folks. Just going to put some highlights in now. Hopefully you're happy with the boat. I'm going to get myself a bit of tissue. I'm going to do a similar thing to what we did in the trees, where you put the highlights in the trees, remember that? But I'm going to do this on the boat this time. So if we get close into the hull, we're going to clean the brush. So I'm using the rigger brush here, or the 6. I'm going to wipe off the majority of the colour. So I've got a damp brush. So I've basically wiped off the majority. And I want to put some little lines coming around here. A bit like you did on your trees, if you remember. And then I'll take the tissue and give it a dab. And can you see, it's putting little bits of highlights in. We can also have a go at putting a line coming down here as well. Let's give it a bit of a scrub a few times. And press it firmly. Can you see it's put the line down the front of the boat? Now if you want to impress your neighbour, you could do the same thing in the water. Press it with the tissue. Does that make sense? And a simple thing like that, it's always the case with lift out. It makes the world of difference. If it didn't quite come out first time, go back in, do it again. Even with these lines that we put around here, if you didn't quite get them first time, go back in and put them back in a second time, look. Because each time you do it with that damp brush, it takes a layer of paint off. And what a difference that makes to that, don't it? These are the bits, these are the finishing bits, folks, so please, please stick with me for the next 5 minutes while I wrap this thing up. What a difference this makes. I would also say it's worth just using a damp pointy brush, rigger brush, lift out brush, or a fine tipped brush to go along this edge here. And take off the colour just here and there. Can you see how it's made it a bit lighter? It sort of brings it forward, don't it? All these little bits make a difference. And although I said to you that the boat is optional, it's its own little painting. It's its own thing. So you can leave the boat on or off if you do this picture again. Remember, you've got the control over this picture. It's your scene. And you've got that power to re-watch it, and you'll get a link emailed to you fairly soon. Super. Okay, now these lift out techniques are making a difference. This mast here, the back one if you've got it, where it goes into the side of the cabin or the hull, I want to lighten it. Give that a press. Can you see it takes a bit of colour out there, so it kind of brings it forward. And if you want to make it, if you want to really make a last little impression on the picture, make it a focal point, you could even put little highlights around that dark area coming inside. Little sort of random bits of boaty stuff. Is this making sense? Let me know. Thanks very much for the plug. You know, it's all about word of mouth. You know, I've been teaching workshops physically out and about for all this time, and all of a sudden we're having to adapt to do them inside. We have been doing watercolour TV for 12 years, but not live, of course. So I'm new to this just as much as you are, but from a teaching point of view, this is spot on, it really is. So your little bits of downward lines, you know, just inside here, just little random bits of highlights, it makes the detail. Hopefully this is working for you. And I would just pop a few little highlights inside that roll sail as well. Just a few little sort of spots and dots. Again, giving it a tap, give it a little tap. Yeah, I've got to say a thank you to Sarah. I know she's sat watching. She came up with the idea we're doing a live workshop, so I think everybody needs to say a big thank you to Sarah for coming up with the idea. And of course Jacob, he's probably sat watching this as well, either watching that or Paw Patrol, one of the two. Now that's my highlights, which does make a difference. That makes the world of difference, that picture. And to finish off the painting, in a few minutes, I'm going to be using a craft knife or a scalpel or a razor blade or something pretty sharp. Jenny Hawkins has asked if she can buy paper and paints on the website. Yes, you can. If you go onto watercolour.tv, there's the art shop and you can buy them and we will ship them all over the world. You can also, if you're a member of Watercolour TV, you can get a 10% discount. So there's a code that comes with your membership. So thank you very much. Okay, so a craft knife, and this is a sharp one again. It's an optional thing. Beginners don't tend to like the idea of scratching paper, but people that have been teaching know that this does make quite a difference. And if we look back at the picture pretty much is a finished scene here, but I feel that we could just put a bit of extra light in the water before we actually finish. Okay, so let me show you some things you can do with a craft knife. All right, and it's physically cutting your paper, and it's thick enough to take it. Okay, so it's a very sharp knife. Again, you can think about it. So first of all, I like to put a little bit of light down the edge of these masts. Now I'm going to get as close as I can to this for you, so you can actually see this thing in action. So I want to come straight down, almost as though the sun's catching, and the same for the smaller one as well. Look. Just a little bit, just at the top of something, it brings it out, don't it? It's just a nice way of creating a bit of light. Does that make sense? And then over the top of the reflection of the boat, you do some horizontal scrapes. I think it was Keith that asked about this. It does harm your paper. That's why it's not something that you do till the end. But you can see, just by looking, it looks like the light's catching the paper. You're physically going and you cut your paper, literally, horizontally. And of course, you can make the reflection. It's quite strange I'm doing this, and I'm listening at the back for the people scraping, because I do the workshops and there's normally this big sound, and of course it's very peaceful. But I love that. I love it, folks. Honestly, I've been doing this for a long time and I think it just always finishes off a nice sunset. water. It's this nice gorgeous scrape. It really comes alive, and of course over the top of the sun reflection as well. You might find that your paper works better in one direction than another, as daft as it seems. You could even do a little bit on the edge of the hull. See that little bit of light, little bit of scraping just here. It reminds me of those old copper scrapey boards you used to get as a kid. I remember getting them. You used to scrape off the carbon and it'd reveal a colour underneath, like a copper or something. Does anybody else remember them? So can't paint is saying having trouble getting on for next week. Do you mean getting booked for next week? Let me know in the chat and I'll help you out with that. Again, so horizontal lines, you can do this right up over the water, right up to the edge of the trees, and it really puts a gorgeous bit of light. I mean, it makes such a difference. If you look at that side there, folks, keep them horizontal, look at that side of the picture for a second, and I'll pan across to this side. Can you see it's like it's missing something? So it really does put gorgeous light horizontal across, as I'm sure you can see. And you get that nice bit of sparkle in your water. I'm a big fan of doing this over the top of dark areas like here, and right up to the water's edge, like over the top of the reflection of the boat as well, and right down for the sun reflection, right down. Nice sharp craft knife. Have a think about popping those in your toolbox. Thanks for the comment from J Howson, saying we did a great job to get everybody up and running. Everybody was okay this morning. We just had maybe one comment from someone that wasn't too happy, but I was frantically trying to get everybody up and running. But we got there, folks, and we've produced a wonderful picture together. So I've enjoyed it as much as you have, you know. Horizontal lines across the foreground. See that gorgeous bit of sparkle just here? It calms down all that grey that you put in. You remember me saying I wasn't too happy with this big blob of grey over this side? Over here. Well, perfect example of how to break that up. And also, one or two people did say they weren't too happy with the skid marks. So, scraping off the colour around skid marks calms them down, okay? But that really puts that nice bit of finishing touch to it, folks. It really does. And a nice bit of sparkle is always appreciated. Thanks, Jan, for the nice comment there. So let's have a little look across all those nice highlights. I just love how it makes that sun reflect. Let's just zoom back a touch, look. It really does make it look shine, don't it? Like it's shining. But that will always be there. I mean, this painting here, I'm going to show you dates from 2018, so a couple of years old, this picture, and that's exactly how the light was created there. So it does make a difference. It really does. And it's always going to be a case of it's one of the last things that you actually do in your picture. So well done, folks. Now everybody will get emailed, okay, a link on how to view this entire video, again at any time, just for you people that booked. I will also send you a scan of the finished picture to your email address, so you're going to get that as well later on this afternoon. And remember that everybody that has took part in today and is booked for the one next week, the 5th, remember that is the Bluebell Woodland, which I'm looking forward to doing, will get a chance to win this picture here and a couple of my DVDs. All right. What I'd like to do before I finish is I'd like to encourage you to very carefully take your masking tape away. That makes a difference, if you want to, that is. It's quite satisfying taking the tape off. What I'm going to do is I want to pop a mount on this thing. You know, those nice kind of bevel mounts that we get, because I think they look nice at the end. So I'm just going to pop a bit of tape around, and please do ask me any questions. And that was the first live stream I've done in the form of a workshop from this particular studio. We're all geared up for this, folks, so we're doing more and more of these. And I'm going to pop this mount on here just to show you the finished watercolour picture there. So everybody will get sent, there you go, everybody will get sent a link to view this video as much as you like. If you lose the link, get in touch, we'll send it to you again. But just taking the masking tape away actually makes a difference to the picture.